What happens when park rangers, the people who know wilderness like their own backyard, encounter something impossible? Tonight, I'm revealing 11 classified incidents that the National Park Service tried to bury. From hikers walking the same trail for 12 straight hours without stopping, to research stations where time flows backwards, to the terrifying Policy 847X that tells rangers what to do when they meet themselves on the trail. Hit subscribe to Verified Fears right now and turn on notifications, because after you hear about Policy 847X in our final story, you'll never trust what you see in the wilderness again. Let's move to our first story. It was a crisp October night in 2018 when dispatch officer Anna Faith received what seemed like a routine call at the Cascade National Forest Communication Center. The initial report came in at 11:47 p.m. from a concerned motorist who had spotted someone walking along the popular Timber Ridge Trail in complete darkness. No flashlight visible, moving at an unnaturally steady pace. What started as a simple welfare check would become one of the most documented and disturbing cases in Park Service history. The Timber Ridge Trail is a well-maintained 3.2-mile loop that typically takes hikers about 2 hours to complete during daylight. It's considered an easy family trail, with gentle slopes and clearly marked paths that wind through dense Douglas fir and cedar groves. The trailhead parking area has security lighting and is equipped with emergency call boxes every half mile. During peak season, hundreds of visitors use this trail daily, but after sunset, it's completely deserted. Park regulations strictly prohibit hiking after dark without proper permits and safety equipment. When the first call came in, Anna Faith logged it as a standard code 7, potential hiker in distress. She immediately radioed Ranger Tom Peterson, who was on patrol nearby. Peterson, a 15-year veteran with extensive night rescue experience, responded that he would investigate and provide assistance to what he assumed was either a lost hiker or someone experiencing a medical emergency. The radio transcript from that night, preserved in the Park Service archives, captures everything that followed. At 12:03 a.m., Peterson's voice crackled through the radio with his first observation. "Dispatch, I've got visual on the subject. Adult male, appears to be wearing dark clothing, walking the trail counterclockwise from the main entrance. No visible gear, no light source. Subject appears to be maintaining a consistent pace." Anna Faith acknowledged and asked Peterson to make contact. What happened next defied all standard protocols and Peterson's years of experience. "Dispatch, I'm calling out to the subject from approximately 50 yards. No response. Subject continues walking, hasn't acknowledged my presence or my calls." Peterson's voice carried the practiced calm of someone who had handled hundreds of night rescues, but there was something different in his tone. He tried again, using his department-issued spotlight to illuminate the trail ahead of the figure. Subject is not responding to verbal commands or light signals. Moving to intercept. Peterson jogged ahead to position himself directly in the hiker's path, following standard procedure for disoriented individuals. As he got closer, he could make out more details about the mysterious walker. The man appeared to be in his 30s, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans despite the near-freezing temperature. His hair was slightly disheveled, and his arms swung mechanically at his sides. Most unsettling was his gait. Perfectly measured steps, each one identical in length and timing, like a metronome keeping time in the darkness. "Dispatch, something's not right here." Peterson radioed at 12:11 a.m. "Subject is now 10 feet away, walking directly toward me. I'm positioned center trail with full illumination. He's looking straight ahead, but showing no recognition of my presence. No acknowledgement whatsoever." Anna Faith could hear the concern creeping into Peterson's voice as he continued his report. "Subject's eyes are open, appears conscious but completely unresponsive, requesting backup and medical assistance. The most chilling part of Peterson's account came next. As the mysterious hiker approached, Peterson stepped aside to avoid collision, planning to follow and observe. But the man never deviated from his path. He walked with that same mechanical precision, never turning his head, never adjusting his stride, never showing any awareness of the ranger's presence. Peterson fell into step behind him, maintaining radio contact with Anna Faith every few minutes. By 12:30 a.m., Peterson realized something impossible was happening. "Dispatch, we've completed one full loop of the trail. Subject maintained the exact same pace throughout. No stops, no rest, no deviation from the path. We're now passing the trailhead again, and he's continuing on for another loop." The timestamp on Peterson's radio confirmed what seemed unbelievable. In just over an hour, they had covered 3.2 miles of trail, and the mysterious hiker showed no signs of fatigue or intention to stop. Anna Faith dispatched Ranger Lisa Chen as backup, and by 1:15 a.m., 2 experienced rangers were following the tireless walker. Chen's observations matched Peterson's exactly. The man's breathing never changed, his pace never varied, and he never acknowledged their presence despite their continued attempts at communication. They tried everything: verbal commands, spotlight illumination, even playing loud music from Peterson's radio. Nothing broke the hiker's mechanical trance. The radio logs show that over the next 6 hours, 3 different ranger teams documented the same phenomenon. The mysterious hiker completed loop after loop of the Timber Ridge Trail, never stopping, never resting, never varying his pace by even a single step. Each loop took exactly 1 hour and 47 minutes. His stride length remained constant at 2.3 feet, measured by the rangers using standard trail markers as reference points. What made the situation even more disturbing was the hiker's complete immunity to environmental factors. As the temperature dropped to 28 degrees Fahrenheit, condensation should have been visible from his breathing, but rangers reported seeing none. His light clothing should have been inadequate for the conditions, but he showed no signs of cold stress or hypothermia. Most unnaturally, he never stumbled, never adjusted his footing, never reacted to the uneven terrain that would challenge any hiker, especially in darkness. At 3:45 a.m., Peterson made a crucial decision that would haunt him for years. He positioned himself directly in the hiker's path, refusing to move aside. The collision that followed was unlike anything in his experience. The mysterious walker didn't stop, didn't acknowledge the obstacle, didn't show any awareness of impact. Instead, he walked directly into Peterson with the same mechanical precision, pushing against him with unwavering force until Peterson was compelled to step aside. The hiker continued without missing a beat, his rhythm unbroken. "Dispatch, this isn't human behavior," Peterson radioed, his voice shaking for the first time that night. "Whatever this is, it's not responding to physical barriers, communication attempts, or environmental stimuli. We're dealing with something outside normal parameters." Anna Faith documented every detail, knowing that this report would require extensive review by Park Service headquarters. As dawn approached, the rangers prepared for what they thought would be the end of this bizarre encounter. Surely daylight would bring some change in the hiker's behavior or reveal some rational explanation for the night's events. But at exactly 6:13 a.m., with the first rays of sunlight filtering through the forest canopy, something extraordinary happened. Peterson was positioned at trail marker 7, approximately halfway through the loop, when his radio crackled with urgent communication from Chen, who was stationed at the trailhead. "Tom, the subject just stopped. Complete stop. He's standing motionless about 20 feet from the parking area. Peterson immediately radioed for his exact location, and Chen's response sent chills through everyone listening. "He's gone, Tom." 1 second he was standing there, the next second, empty trail. No footsteps, no movement, just gone. Peterson rushed to Chen's location, but they found nothing. No footprints leading away from the trail, no sign that anyone had ever been there. The only evidence of the night's events existed in their radio logs and written reports. A thorough search of the area revealed no trace of the mysterious hiker. No abandoned clothing, no personal items, no indication that anyone had spent 12 hours walking the same trail loop without rest. The case was officially classified as unsolved, but it established protocols that remain in effect today. Rangers are now required to document any individual observed on park trails for more than 4 consecutive hours, regardless of apparent normalcy. Motion-activated cameras were installed along popular night hiking routes, though none have ever captured footage matching that October night's encounter. Anna Faith, now retired, still maintains the original radio logs from that night. She's often asked about the most disturbing case of her career, and her answer never changes. In 32 years of dispatch, I've handled everything from bear attacks to missing persons to medical emergencies. But that night, listening to our most experienced rangers describe something that shouldn't exist. Something that walked the same trail for 12 hours without stopping, without resting, without showing any sign of humanity. That changed how I think about what's really out there in the wilderness after dark. The Timber Ridge Trail remains open to the public, but rangers report an unusual number of requests from visitors who claim to have seen a lone figure walking the trail at night. Each report describes the same mechanical gait, the same unresponsive behavior, the same impossible endurance. Park Service policy now requires immediate radio contact for any nighttime sightings on the Timber Ridge Trail. But as of today, no ranger has ever successfully made contact with the midnight hiker again. Let's move to our second story. In September 2019, Ranger Noah Gabriel was conducting his routine morning patrol of the backcountry campsites in Olympic National Park when he received what he initially thought was a standard bear complaint. 3 different camping groups had reported unusual disturbances during the night at Deer Creek Campground, a popular backcountry site nestled deep in the temperate rainforest. What Noah Gabriel discovered would challenge every protocol he knew about wildlife management and force the Park Service to quietly implement new security measures that remain classified today. Deer Creek Campground sits in a remote valley approximately 8 miles from the nearest trailhead, accessible only by a challenging hiking trail that winds through old-growth forest. The campground consists of 6 designated sites, each equipped with a bear-resistant food storage container, fire ring, and picnic table. During peak season, the sites fill quickly with experienced backpackers seeking solitude in one of the park's most pristine wilderness areas. The campers who made the reports were not novices. They included a retired park ranger from Yellowstone, a wilderness survival instructor, and a family with over 20 years of backcountry experience. The first report came from Site 3, occupied by David Chen, the retired Yellowstone ranger, and his wife, Maria. According to his written statement, they had followed proper food storage protocols to the letter, securing all food, toiletries, and scented items in the bear-resistant container before sunset. The container, a government-approved steel unit weighing over 40 pounds when locked, required a specific sequence of movements to open, a design specifically created to prevent bear access while remaining manageable for humans. When David woke at 6:30 a.m. to begin preparing breakfast, he discovered something that defied explanation. The bear container remained locked and undamaged, showing no signs of tampering or attempted entry. However, when he opened it using the proper sequence, he found all of their food meticulously rearranged in perfect geometric patterns. Granola bars were arranged in precise, concentric circles. Trail mix had been separated by ingredient type and organized into parallel lines of exact measurements. Dried fruit was sorted by color and arranged in a perfect spiral pattern. Most disturbing was their instant oatmeal packets. 24 individual servings had been opened, and the contents arranged in a complex mandala pattern covering the entire bottom of the container. David's wilderness experience told him this wasn't animal behavior. Bears, raccoons, and other wildlife-seeking food create chaos. Scattered containers, torn packaging, and obvious signs of consumption. This was the opposite. Methodical, precise, and purposeful organization that demonstrated intelligence and planning. Nothing had been eaten or damaged. Every item remained perfectly preserved, simply rearranged with mathematical precision. The second report came from Site 5, where wilderness survival instructor Rebecca Martinez had been camping alone. Her account matched David's in its impossible details. Rebecca prided herself on understanding animal behavior and maintaining perfect campsite security. She used 2 bear containers due to her extended solo trip, both properly secured and positioned according to park regulations. Like David, she found both containers undisturbed from the outside, but completely reorganized within. Rebecca's food had been arranged in what she described as architectural patterns. Canned goods were stacked in perfect pyramids. Energy bars were positioned to form geometric shapes she couldn't identify. Most unnervingly, her freeze-dried meals had been arranged to spell out what appeared to be symbols or letters in a language she didn't recognize. Every package remained sealed and undamaged, but the arrangement demonstrated a level of intelligence that chilled her to the bone. The third report provided the most disturbing details. The Morrison family, parents Jim and Sandra with their teenage twins, occupied sites 1 and 2. They had secured their substantial food supply across 3 bear containers, following protocols they had refined over 2 decades of backcountry camping. Their discovery revealed the systematic and escalating nature of whatever had visited the campground. Each container told a different part of an increasingly complex story. Container 1 showed the same geometric patterns reported by other campers, but Container 2 revealed something more sophisticated. Their food had been arranged to create what appeared to be a 3-dimensional model or map. Boxes and packages were stacked and positioned to form structures resembling buildings, roads, and landscapes. Container 3 contained the most disturbing arrangement. Their food spelled out the names of each family member in perfect block letters, using different colored packaging to create contrast and readability. Noah Gabriel arrived at the campground by 10:15 a.m., expecting to find evidence of unusual but explainable animal behavior. Instead, he encountered 3 separate groups of experienced campers describing identical, impossible events. His initial assessment focused on the bear containers themselves. Each unit showed no damage, no scratches, no indication that any tool or force had been used to compromise their security. The locking mechanisms functioned perfectly and showed no signs of tampering. Gabriel's training included extensive wildlife behavior education, and he immediately recognized that no known animal could produce these results. The geometric precision, the careful organization, the mathematical arrangements all pointed to human intelligence. But the logistics made human intervention impossible. The campground's remote location, the lack of access roads, and the absence of human footprints or evidence eliminated the possibility of pranks or vandalism. More disturbing was the timeline. All 3 groups reported securing their food containers before sunset and discovering the arrangements at first light. Gabriel calculated that the reorganization would have required hours of careful, methodical work. The complexity of the arrangements suggested detailed planning and possibly multiple attempts to achieve the precise geometric patterns. Yet none of the campers heard sounds of activity during the night, despite the obvious time and effort required for such elaborate organization. Gabriel documented the arrangements with extensive photography before allowing the campers to reclaim their food. His report, filed under Incident Classification 4X, noted several factors that elevated the case beyond standard wildlife encounters. The precision of the geometric arrangements suggested mathematical understanding. The use of color patterns and size gradations indicated aesthetic appreciation. Most troubling was the apparent knowledge of human language, demonstrated by the Morrison family's name arrangements. The investigation expanded when Gabriel discovered this wasn't an isolated incident. Archive searches revealed similar reports dating back over 15 years, all at remote backcountry campsites throughout Olympic National Park. Each case involved the same elements: undamaged bear containers, meticulously organized food arrangements, and complete absence of noise or visual contact with whatever entity was responsible. The reports had been classified individually as anomalies, but together they revealed a pattern of escalating complexity and intelligence. Park Service protocols required Gabriel to interview the campers individually to identify potential discrepancies or collaborative deception. Instead, he found remarkable consistency in their accounts. Each group independently described the same methodical precision, the same mathematical arrangements, the same eerie perfection of organization. More importantly, each group expressed the same unsettling conclusion. Something was studying them, learning from their camping habits, and demonstrating its intelligence through increasingly sophisticated displays. The case took a darker turn when Gabriel expanded his investigation to include nearby campgrounds. Similar incidents had occurred at 7 different backcountry sites over the past 5 years, each showing progression in complexity and organization. Early reports described simple geometric arrangements, but recent cases revealed sophisticated symbolic patterns and language recognition. Whatever was responsible was learning, adapting, and becoming more purposeful in its interactions. Gabriel's final report recommended immediate implementation of new monitoring protocols for all backcountry campsites. Motion-activated cameras were discreetly installed at affected locations, though to date, none have captured footage of the entity responsible. New bear container. Designs with internal monitoring capabilities were tested but proved ineffective. The rearrangements continued despite electronic surveillance. The most disturbing discovery came during Gabriel's follow-up interviews with affected campers. Several reported strange dreams during their stay at Deer Creek Campground. Vivid nightmares about being observed and studied by something that remained just outside their perception. The dreams shared common elements: the sensation of being cataloged, measured, and organized like the food in their containers. Some campers reported waking with the conviction that they were part of an ongoing experiment, subjects in a study conducted by an intelligence that viewed humans as simply another species to be categorized and arranged. Today, Deer Creek Campground remains open to the public, but new protocols require campers to report any unusual food arrangements immediately. Rangers conduct unscheduled night patrols of backcountry sites, though they've been instructed to maintain distance and avoid direct confrontation with whatever entity continues to visit campsites after dark. The bear containers have been redesigned with additional security features, but the rearrangements continue with the same mathematical precision and disturbing intelligence. Noah Gabriel, now a senior ranger with over 2 decades of experience, still patrols the backcountry campsites of Olympic National Park. When asked about the most puzzling case of his career, he always returns to those perfectly arranged food containers and the intelligence behind them. Something out there is studying us, he says quietly, learning our patterns, understanding our behavior, and demonstrating its intelligence through arrangements so precise they could only come from a mind that thinks in ways we can't comprehend. The question isn't what it wants, it's what it's learning about us and what it plans to do with that knowledge. Let's move to our third story. In the summer of 2017, Ranger Sella Kate was conducting her weekly safety inspection of the narrow slot canyons in Utah's remote desert wilderness when she encountered something that would force the National Park Service to establish new communication protocols for solo canyon patrols. What began as a routine safety check in the twisting sandstone corridors of Devil's Throat Canyon became a terrifying game of vocal mimicry that challenged everything Sella Kate understood about sound, echo, and the creatures that might inhabit the most isolated places on Earth. Devil's Throat Canyon earned its ominous name from early settlers who described the sound of wind whistling through its narrow passages as resembling tortured voices. The canyon system stretches for over 2 miles through layered sandstone formations, with some passages narrowing to less than 3 feet wide while walls tower 60 feet overhead. During Sella Kate's tenure, the canyon had been the site of several technical rescues involving inexperienced hikers who became trapped or disoriented in the maze-like passages. Her weekly inspections served multiple purposes: checking for rockfall hazards, documenting weather damage, and ensuring emergency rope anchors remained secure. On July 23rd, Sella Kate entered Devil's Throat Canyon at 7:30 a.m., carrying her standard equipment load, including climbing gear, emergency medical supplies, and a digital voice recorder for documenting safety observations. The voice recorder, a Park Service requirement for solo canyon inspections, captured every sound from that morning's patrol. The audio files, now stored in a restricted access archive, provide the only objective record of what transpired in the depths of Devil's Throat Canyon. The first anomaly occurred approximately 45 minutes into her inspection, when Sella Kate reached a junction known as the Cathedral Chamber, a wider section where 3 narrow passages converge beneath a natural skylight opening. Standard safety protocol required her to call out and listen for responses that might indicate other hikers in the canyon system. Her voice, clearly recorded on the digital device, echoed normally through the chamber. "Hello? Anyone in the canyon? This is Park Service conducting safety inspection." The response that came back defied the laws of acoustics and canyon echo patterns. Instead of the expected reverberation and gradual sound decay, Sella Kate's voice seemed to bounce back with unusual clarity and precision. But more disturbing was the timing. The echo arrived exactly 3 seconds after her call, regardless of which direction she faced or the distance to the canyon walls. In confined slot canyons, echoes typically return within milliseconds, and their characteristics change based on the caller's position and the surrounding rock formations. Sella Kate's training included extensive knowledge of canyon acoustics, essential for search and rescue operations. She recognized immediately that the echo patterns were wrong. Normal acoustic behavior in slot canyons creates complex sound reflections that overlap and fade gradually. What she heard was mechanically precise, a perfect reproduction of her voice returning after an unnaturally consistent delay. Her recorded observations, made in real time, capture her growing concern. Note for safety report: unusual echo characteristics in Cathedral Chamber. Sound reflection patterns inconsistent with known canyon acoustics. Determined to understand the phenomenon, Sella Kate continued her inspection while experimenting with different vocalizations. Each call produced the same result: a perfect echo returning exactly 3 seconds later. She tried varying her volume, pitch, and the direction of her calls. The mysterious echo matched every variation with mechanical precision, maintaining the 3-second delay regardless of the acoustic variables that should have affected timing and clarity. The situation escalated when Sela Kate realized the echo was beginning to anticipate her calls. At 8:47 a.m., according to the timestamp on her voice recorder, she began to say, "Testing Canyon acoustics," but stopped after "Testing Canyon" to check her equipment. 3 seconds later, a voice completed the phrase with perfect pronunciation, "Acoustics." The voice was unmistakably her own, but it had somehow predicted and completed a sentence she never finished speaking. Sela Kate's background included psychological training for high-stress rescue situations, and she recognized the importance of maintaining objective documentation despite her growing alarm. Her recorded notes from this point show remarkable professional composure. Unexplained vocal phenomenon in Devil's Throat Canyon. Echo patterns suggest impossible prediction of incomplete vocalizations. Continuing inspection to gather additional data for safety assessment. As she moved deeper into the canyon system, the vocal mimicry became increasingly sophisticated. The mysterious echo began incorporating words and phrases from earlier in her inspection, weaving them into responses that demonstrated not just repetition, but comprehension and creative recombination. When Sela Kate called out, "Anyone in the lower passage?" the response came back as, "Anyone inspecting the lower passage like Sela Kate?" The use of her name, which she had never spoken aloud during the inspection, sent chills through her that were clearly audible in her recorded breathing patterns. The most unsettling development occurred in the narrow section known as the squeeze, where the canyon walls closed to less than 2 feet apart, and hikers must navigate sideways through the passage. Sela Kate's voice recorder captured her struggle to maintain radio contact with the outside. A routine safety check required every 30 minutes during solo canyon inspections. Her radio calls went unanswered due to the canyon's depth and rock interference. But the mysterious echo began responding to her radio attempts. Base station, this is Ranger Rodriguez, conducting safety inspection in Devil's Throat Canyon, over. Sela Kate's call received no response from the Park Service radio network, but 3 seconds later, her own voice responded through the canyon. Base station acknowledges, Ranger Rodriguez. Continue safety inspection. All clear, over. The echo had not only mimicked perfect radio protocol, but had responded as if it were the base station itself. Sela Kate's training emphasized the importance of completing safety inspections, regardless of personal discomfort. But the situation in Devil's Throat Canyon was rapidly moving beyond standard protocols. The echo entity, as she began thinking of it, demonstrated increasing familiarity with her voice patterns, radio procedures, and even her personal information. Most disturbing was its apparent ability to access information it shouldn't possess. Her full name, her radio call signs, and details about Park Service procedures that weren't part of her spoken observations. The climax of the encounter occurred in the deepest section of the canyon, nearly a mile from the entrance, where Sela Kate discovered evidence that she wasn't the first Park Service employee to experience this phenomenon. Carved into the sandstone wall, barely visible in the filtered light, were initials and dates spanning over 20 years. Each inscription was accompanied by the same notation. The echo knows. Some dates were recent enough to correspond with Ranger Sela Kate recognized, but others predated her employment and belonged to rangers she knew had transferred to other parks under mysterious circumstances. According to her voice recorder, Sela Kate spent several minutes documenting the inscriptions when the echo entity demonstrated its most terrifying capability. Without any prompting from her, it began reciting the names and dates carved into the wall, but in the voices of different people, voices she recognized as belonging to former colleagues. Each name was spoken in a different vocal pattern, suggesting the echo entity had somehow preserved and could reproduce the voices of every ranger who had encountered it over the decades. Michael Torres, 1998, came in a deep male voice she remembered from her training orientation. Jennifer Walsh, 2003, in the crisp tones of a ranger who had abruptly transferred to Alaska. David Kim, 2011, in the familiar voice of her former supervisor who had taken early retirement after what he described as inexplicable stress-related incidents during canyon patrols. The entity was revealing the scope of its encounters, demonstrating that Sela Kate was part of a pattern stretching back decades. The final entry in Sela Kate's voice recorder captures her decision to evacuate the canyon immediately. Her professional composure finally cracked as she realized the implications of what she was experiencing. Emergency evacuation from Devil's Throat Canyon. Unexplained phenomenon requires immediate supervisor notification and potential closure of canyon to public access. This is not a standard safety issue. Something in this canyon is collecting and reproducing human voices across multiple decades. Recommend immediate investigation by specialized personnel. As Sela Kate made her way back through the canyon system, the echo entity accompanied her with increasingly personal vocalizations. It began using phrases from her childhood, words in Spanish she had spoken to her grandmother, and even private conversations she had never shared with anyone. The entity wasn't just mimicking her voice. It was accessing memories and experiences that should have been impossible for any external force to know. The most chilling moment came as she approached the canyon exit. The echo entity spoke in her voice, but with words she had never said. Sela Kate will return. The canyon remembers. The canyon collects. The canyon waits. The statement felt like both a prediction and a threat, delivered in her own voice with emotional inflections that perfectly matched her speech patterns. Sela Kate's report triggered an immediate review of canyon safety protocols and a comprehensive investigation of Devil's Throat Canyon. Acoustic specialists found no natural explanation for the sound phenomena she described. Geological surveys revealed no unusual mineral compositions or formations that might account for the anomalous echo patterns. Most troubling was the discovery that other slot canyons in the region had similar reports dating back to the earliest Park Service records, all describing the same 3-second delay pattern and increasingly sophisticated vocal mimicry. The Park Service implemented new protocols requiring 2-person teams for all slot canyon inspections. But the policy proved insufficient. The echo entity continued its activities, now demonstrating the ability to mimic both rangers simultaneously and carry on conversations between the voices it had collected. Electronic monitoring equipment placed in Devil's Throat Canyon consistently malfunctioned, with recording devices either failing entirely or capturing only static during periods when rangers reported vocal contact with the entity. Today, Devil's Throat Canyon remains open to experienced hikers with proper permits, but Park Service personnel are no longer authorized to conduct solo inspections. Sela Kate, now working in a different park system, rarely speaks about her experience in the slot canyons. When pressed for details, she offers only a warning that every ranger should remember. In the deep places of the earth, where sound behaves strangely and echoes last longer than they should, something is listening. And once it learns your voice, it never forgets how to use it. The voice recordings from that July morning remain in the Park Service archives, accessible only to personnel with special clearance. Those who have heard them report the same unsettling conclusion. By the end of Sela Kate's canyon inspection, it becomes impossible to distinguish between her voice and the echo that responds to her calls. The entity had learned to mimic her so perfectly that even acoustic analysis cannot determine which voice belongs to the ranger and which belongs to whatever waits in the depths of Devil's Throat Canyon. Let's move to our fourth story. The autumn of 2015 was when rookie ranger Dylan Martinez learned that some night shifts at remote park stations test more than your ability to stay awake. Dylan had been assigned to the isolated Appalachian Visitor Center for what should have been a routine overnight security watch. But what he discovered in the building's surveillance system would force the Park Service to implement new protocols for solo night duty and raise questions about the nature of time itself in the ancient mountains. The Blackstone Ridge Visitor Center sits at the end of a winding gravel road, nearly 12 miles from the nearest town and completely cut off from cell phone coverage. The modest two-story building serves as an information hub during peak season, but after Labor Day, it operates with minimal staffing and closes to the public at sunset. The night security position was typically assigned to veteran rangers who understood the isolation and could handle the psychological challenges of spending 10 hours alone in a building surrounded by thousands of acres of wilderness. Dylan's supervisor, Chief Ranger Patricia Collins, had made the assignment reluctantly. With 2 experienced rangers on medical leave and another on vacation, she had no choice but to assign the night shift to Dylan, despite his having only 6 months of Park Service experience. Her briefing was thorough but routine. Monitor the building's perimeter using the 8-camera security system, maintain radio contact with headquarters every 2 hours, and document any unusual activity in the overnight log. The building's security system had been installed in 2010, featuring modern digital cameras with night vision capabilities and a central monitoring station in the main office. Dylan arrived at 9 p.m. on a crisp October evening, relieving Day Ranger Susan Wright, who seemed unusually eager to complete her end-of-shift duties. Her hurried explanation of the security procedures struck Dylan as odd, particularly her emphasis on certain cameras being unreliable and her advice to ignore any technical glitches that might show up on the monitors. When Dylan asked for clarification, Susan paused at the door, her hand on the light switch, and offered what seemed like a warning disguised as casual advice. Sometimes the cameras pick up interference from old equipment in the building. If you see anything that doesn't make sense, just focus on the current feeds and don't overthink it. The visitor center's layout was simple. A large main room with informational displays, a gift shop area, 2 offices, a small kitchen, and restrooms on the first floor. The second floor contained storage rooms, a conference area, and the break room where night security personnel were expected to spend their shift. The 8 security cameras provided comprehensive coverage of all entrances, the parking area, and key interior spaces. Camera feeds displayed on 4 monitors arranged on a desk in the main office, with digital timestamps and camera identification numbers clearly visible on each feed. For the first 3 hours of his shift, Dylan found the routine comfortingly predictable. He walked through the building every hour, checking doors and windows, then returned to the security monitors to document normal conditions in the overnight log. The cameras functioned perfectly, showing crisp black and white footage of empty hallways, the vacant parking lot, and the surrounding forest edge. Radio contact with headquarters proceeded smoothly, with dispatcher Jennifer Torres acknowledging his status reports with professional efficiency. The first anomaly occurred at 12:47 a.m., when Dylan noticed something unusual about Camera 3, which monitored the main entrance hallway. The timestamp in the corner of the screen displayed the correct date and time, but the hallway appeared different. Instead of the modern LED lighting fixtures he had walked under just an hour earlier, the camera showed older fluorescent lights casting a yellower glow. The visitor displays along the walls appeared different too. Older-style poster boards and wooden stands instead of the current digital information kiosks. Dylan assumed he was seeing equipment malfunction or some kind of video overlay error. He walked to the main hallway to compare what he saw directly with the camera feed. The hallway looked exactly as it should. Modern fixtures, current displays, and the familiar layout he had studied during orientation. But when he returned to the monitoring station, Camera 3 continued showing the older version of the same space. The timestamp remained accurate, but the visual content was wrong. Consulting the security system manual proved frustrating. The equipment was relatively new, well-maintained, and showed no error codes or warning indicators. Dylan documented the discrepancy in the overnight log, noting the specific camera and time, but decided to continue his normal routine while monitoring the situation. His radio check-in with dispatcher Torres at 1 a.m. went smoothly, and he chose not to mention the camera anomaly pending further observation. The situation escalated dramatically at 1:23 a.m. when Dylan observed a figure walking through the hallway shown on Camera 3. The person appeared to be a middle-aged man, wearing a Park Service uniform. But the style was clearly from an earlier era. Different shirt design, different badge placement, and older equipment on his utility belt. The figure moved with the casual familiarity of someone conducting a routine patrol, checking doors and examining displays exactly as Dylan had been doing. What made the sighting impossible was that Dylan had just completed his own hallway patrol 15 minutes earlier, and the building was definitely empty. All doors remained locked from the inside, the alarm system showed no intrusion alerts, and no vehicles had entered the parking area. Yet Camera 3 clearly showed someone else, conducting security rounds in what appeared to be the same building, but from a different time period. Dylan's training emphasized the importance of investigating security anomalies immediately. He grabbed his flashlight and radio and headed directly to the main hallway, moving quickly but quietly to avoid alerting any potential intruder. The hallway was empty, exactly as it should be. Modern fixtures, current displays, no sign that anyone had been there. But when he returned to the monitoring station, Camera 3 showed the uniformed figure still conducting his patrol, now examining a display case that Dylan knew contained different exhibits than what the camera was showing. The timestamp on Camera 3 continued to show the correct current time, but everything else about the feed suggested it was somehow receiving footage from years earlier. Dylan began documenting everything in detail, taking photographs of the monitor screens with his personal camera, and making extensive notes about the exact time and nature of each observation. His growing alarm was tempered by professional training that emphasized objective documentation over speculation. At 2:15 a.m., the situation became even more disturbing when the figure on Camera 3 appeared to look directly at the camera and wave. The gesture was friendly, acknowledging, as if the person was aware of being observed. Dylan felt a chill as he realized the implications. If this was somehow archived footage, the person shouldn't be aware of current observation. If it was real time, there should be someone in the building. Either possibility violated everything he understood about the security system and the physical reality of his situation. The other 7 cameras continued functioning normally, showing current, real-time footage of the building and surrounding area. Only Camera 3 displayed what appeared to be historical footage, but with current timestamps and increasing interaction with whoever was operating it. Dylan's attempts to reset the camera system or switch to different viewing modes had no effect on the anomalous feed. During his 2 a.m. radio check with dispatcher Torres, Dylan made a decision that would define his career with the Park Service. He reported the technical malfunction with Camera 3, but didn't mention the figure he was observing. Something in Torres's immediate response suggested she wasn't surprised. Copy that, Dylan. Camera 3 has had intermittent issues before. Just monitor the other feeds and document anything unusual for the maintenance report. The casual acknowledgement that camera 3 had issues before struck Dylan as significant. This wasn't the first time someone had observed anomalous footage from that particular camera. Dylan began to suspect that the technical glitches Susan Wright had warned him about weren't random equipment problems, but a known, recurring phenomenon that the Park Service chose not to discuss openly. The most unsettling development occurred at 3:30 a.m., when Dylan recognized the figure on camera 3. While researching the visitor center's history during a quiet moment, he had discovered a photo gallery showing past rangers and staff members. One photo, dated 1995, showed a group of rangers at the visitor center's dedication ceremony. The man conducting the patrol in camera 3's feed was clearly visible in that group photo, identified in the caption as Ranger William Hayes, who had served as the center's first night security officer. Further research in the center's historical files revealed that William Hayes had died in 1998, 3 years after the photo was taken, in a vehicle accident while responding to an emergency call. Yet camera 3 continued showing him conducting what appeared to be his regular security rounds, using patrol procedures and checking areas exactly as Dylan had been trained to do. The timestamp remained current, but the footage showed a man who had been dead for 17 years. Dylan's documentation of the incident filled 12 pages of handwritten notes and included detailed timestamps for every observation. The figure appeared on camera 3 for the entire remainder of his shift, conducting what seemed to be a parallel security patrol in the same building, but from a different time period. At no point did the figure's activities correspond with Dylan's own movements or current conditions in the building. The most disturbing element was the increasing sense that William Hayes was aware of being observed. Several times throughout the night, the figure looked directly at camera 3 and appeared to acknowledge Dylan's presence. Near the end of the shift, Hayes seemed to be trying to communicate, pointing at specific areas of the building and making gestures that Dylan interpreted as warnings or instructions. At 6 a.m., when Day Ranger Susan Wright arrived to begin her shift, Dylan was eager to discuss the night's events. Susan's reaction confirmed his suspicions about the recurring nature of the phenomenon. She listened to his account with weary familiarity, then showed him a locked file cabinet containing similar reports dating back to 2010. Every night, security officer who had worked alone at the visitor center had eventually reported observing William Hayes conducting his eternal patrol on camera 3. The Park Service's official position, according to Susan, was that camera 3 had persistent technical problems that occasionally displayed archived footage with incorrect timestamps. Night security personnel were instructed to monitor the other 7 cameras and ignore any technical anomalies from camera 3. The recurring nature of the sightings was attributed to equipment malfunction rather than supernatural activity, and rangers who reported the incidents too frequently or in too much detail were quietly reassigned to other positions. Dylan's report was filed with the others in the locked cabinet, and he was given the same unofficial briefing every night security officer received. Camera 3 occasionally showed archived footage of former staff members. The timestamps were unreliable during these episodes, and the phenomenon posed no security threat to the building or personnel. Rangers were expected to continue their normal duties while monitoring the other cameras and maintaining radio contact with headquarters. The experience fundamentally changed Dylan's understanding of his work environment and the Park Service's approach to unexplained phenomena. He continued working night security shifts at the visitor center for another 6 months, during which William Hayes appeared on camera 3 during approximately half of his shifts. Dylan began to recognize patterns in Hayes's behavior. Certain areas of the building received more attention during his patrols, specific displays were examined repeatedly, and his gestures toward the camera became increasingly urgent over time. The most troubling realization came when Dylan compared Hayes' patrol routes with the building's current security vulnerabilities. Areas that Hayes examined most carefully during his ghostly rounds were often the same locations where Dylan discovered unlocked doors, malfunctioning equipment, or other security issues during his physical patrols. It seemed as though Hayes was still trying to perform his duties, alerting current security personnel to problems he observed from whatever temporal vantage point he occupied. Dylan's final report, submitted when he transferred to a different park assignment, included a recommendation that Camera 3 be completely replaced or the monitoring station relocated to eliminate the anomalous feeds. His suggestion was acknowledged but never implemented. New night security personnel continue to receive the same informal briefing about Camera 3's technical problems, and reports of William Hayes' continued patrols remain filed in the locked cabinet of the Blackstone Ridge Visitor Center. Today, Dylan works as a senior ranger in a different park system, but he still maintains contact with colleagues at Blackstone Ridge. According to current staff, William Hayes continues his nightly security rounds, visible only on Camera 3, still trying to protect a building and park he served faithfully until his death over 25 years ago. The Park Service's official position remains unchanged. Camera 3 occasionally displays archived footage due to technical malfunction, and personnel should focus on monitoring current feeds while ignoring any anomalous content from the problematic camera. When asked about his strangest experience as a park ranger, Dylan always returns to those October nights when he worked alongside a colleague who had been dead for nearly 2 decades. William Hayes was still doing his job, Dylan says quietly. Every night, the same careful patrol, the same attention to detail, the same dedication to protecting that visitor center. The only difference was that he was doing it from 1995, and I was watching him from 20 years later on a security camera that somehow bridged the gap between his time and mine. Let's move to our 5th story. In the early spring of 2016, Forest Maintenance Supervisor Jake Mitchell and his crew encountered something that would challenge their understanding of time itself and force the Park Service to implement new protocols for wilderness trail maintenance operations. What began as routine trail clearing in the dense Pacific Northwest rainforest became a terrifying discovery that nature could somehow accelerate its reclamation processes in ways that defied all biological understanding. The Sitka Spruce Trail winds through some of the most pristine old-growth forest in Olympic National Park, a challenging 8-mile loop that requires constant maintenance due to the region's aggressive vegetation growth. During peak growing season, fallen trees, encroaching undergrowth, and invasive plant species can render sections impassable within weeks. Jake's crew of 4 experienced maintenance workers was tasked with the quarterly clearing operation, a job that typically required 3 days of intensive work with chainsaws, brush cutters, and hand tools. Jake had been supervising trail maintenance for over 12 years and knew every mile of the Sitka Spruce Trail intimately. His crew included veteran workers who understood the rhythms of forest growth and the challenges of maintaining hiking trails in an environment where nature constantly worked to erase human presence. The work was physically demanding, but predictable. Clear fallen logs, cut back encroaching vegetation, repair erosion damage, and ensure the trail remained safely passable for hikers. On March 15th, Jake's crew began their clearing operation at dawn, starting from the eastern trailhead and working systematically toward the western terminus. The first day proceeded normally, with the team clearing approximately 2 miles of trail that had accumulated the expected amount of winter storm damage and early spring growth. Fallen branches, moss-covered logs, and aggressive fern growth required steady work, but nothing outside their normal experience. The crew established their base camp at the midpoint clearing, a natural meadow that served as a staging area for equipment and supplies. The first sign that something was wrong came on the morning of March 16th, when Jake arrived at the previous day's work area to continue the clearing operation. The section of trail they had completely cleared just 18 hours earlier was overgrown again, but not with new growth, with vegetation that appeared to have been growing undisturbed for months or even years. Massive ferns blocked the path. Moss covered the cut stumps so thickly it seemed decades old, and vines had somehow grown across the trail opening with a density that should have required an entire growing season. Jake's initial assumption was that his crew had somehow mistaken their location, or that they were looking at a different section of trail. He used his GPS unit to confirm their position and checked his work notes from the previous day. The coordinates matched exactly, and his photographs from the completed clearing showed the same distinctive rock formations and tree markers. Yet the trail looked as if it had never been touched by human hands. The crew's reaction ranged from confusion to growing alarm as they realized the implications of what they were seeing. Tommy Rodriguez, Jake's most experienced worker with over 15 years of trail maintenance experience, was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. "Boss, this isn't possible. We cut this section clean yesterday. I personally removed that fallen cedar and cleared all those ferns. Now it looks like we were never here." Jake documented the situation with extensive photography, capturing the overgrown trail from multiple angles and comparing the images with his previous day's completion photos. The contrast was impossible to explain through normal biological processes. Vegetation that had been cut at ground level now showed thick, established growth patterns. Fallen logs they had removed with chainsaws appeared to have been naturally decomposing in place for years, covered with moss and supporting entire ecosystems of smaller plants. Determined to understand what had happened, Jake had his crew begin re-clearing the same section of trail. The work proceeded normally, with chainsaws cutting through the vegetation and workers removing the debris. But as they progressed, Jake noticed something that made his blood run cold. The vegetation they were cutting showed signs of previous cutting. Old chainsaw marks, healed over cut surfaces, and growth patterns consistent with having been maintained and then abandoned for extended periods. The most disturbing discovery came when Tommy found his own initials carved into a tree stump they had supposedly cut the previous day. The carving was weathered and aged, as if it had been exposed to the elements for years. Tommy remembered making the carving as a joke during their previous day's work, but the aging of the wood around it suggested far more time had passed than the 18 hours since they had finished their clearing operation. By midday, Jake's crew had re-cleared the mysterious overgrown section, but their unease was growing with each discovery. Tools they remembered leaving at specific locations were found rusted and partially buried under vegetation. A work glove that Tommy had lost the previous day was discovered rotted and decomposed beyond recognition. Most troubling was their base camp in the meadow. Equipment they had left neatly organized was scattered and showed signs of long exposure to weather, despite having been protected by tarps just hours earlier. Jake's radio communication with park headquarters became increasingly difficult as he tried to explain the situation to his supervisor without sounding delusional. Maintenance coordinator Linda Foster listened to his report with professional skepticism, suggesting that the crew might have been working in a different location than they realized, or that winter conditions had accelerated normal decay processes. Her practical explanations seemed reasonable, until Jake sent photographs comparing the previous day's completed work with the current overgrown conditions. The photographs forced Linda to acknowledge that something unprecedented was occurring on the Sitka Spruce Trail. The visual evidence clearly showed the same geographical markers and distinctive features, but the vegetation growth patterns defied all known biological timelines. She immediately dispatched a second crew with botanical specialists to investigate and document the phenomenon. while instructing Jake's team to continue their work while maintaining detailed photographic records of every step in their clearing process. The situation escalated dramatically on the morning of March 17th, when Jake's crew discovered that their previous day's re-clearing work had undergone the same impossible acceleration of natural reclamation. The trail section was once again completely overgrown, but this time the vegetation showed even more advanced stages of growth and decay. Trees that had been saplings in their previous photographs now appeared mature, with thick trunks and established canopies. The ecosystem had somehow compressed years of natural development into a single night. More disturbing was the accumulation of evidence from their own work. The crew found multiple layers of cutting evidence in the same vegetation, old chainsaw marks under newer growth, multiple generations of tool marks, and repeated signs of human activity spanning what appeared to be decades. It became clear that they weren't just experiencing rapid regrowth, but some kind of temporal acceleration where years of natural processes were occurring overnight. Jake's documentation of the phenomenon filled 3 notebooks with detailed observations, GPS coordinates, and time-stamped photographs. The pattern was consistent and terrifying. Any section of trail cleared by his crew would undergo years of natural reclamation processes within 18 to 24 hours. Vegetation would grow, age, die, decompose, and be replaced by new growth in cycles that should have taken decades to complete. The botanical specialists dispatched by Linda Foster arrived on March 18th and immediately recognized that they were dealing with something outside normal scientific understanding. Dr. Sarah Chen, a forest ecologist with 20 years of experience, examined the vegetation samples and growth patterns with increasing amazement. Her preliminary analysis confirmed that the plants showed genuine signs of extended growth periods, seasonal cycles, and natural aging processes that were impossible to fake or simulate. What we're seeing here contradicts everything we know about plant biology and ecosystem development, Dr. Chen reported to park headquarters. These plants have undergone legitimate growth cycles spanning years, possibly decades. The cellular structure, seasonal growth rings, and decay patterns are all consistent with extended natural development. But the timeline makes it impossible. We're documenting decades of ecosystem change occurring overnight. The investigation revealed that the Sitka spruce trail phenomenon wasn't isolated to Jake's current work area. Historical maintenance records showed similar reports dating back over 20 years, though previous incidents had been attributed to record-keeping errors or worker confusion about locations. Patterns of rapid vegetation regrowth, lost equipment aging prematurely, and maintenance work requiring constant repetition had been documented but never seriously investigated as a unified phenomenon. Jake's crew completed their 3-day assignment, but their work became an exercise in futility. Each section of trail they cleared would revert to an overgrown state within 24 hours, as if decades of abandonment had occurred overnight. The psychological impact on experienced workers was severe. Men who had spent careers understanding and predicting forest behavior were confronted with an environment where their expertise was meaningless and their work vanished faster than they could complete it. The most unsettling discovery came on their final day, when Jake found his own abandoned equipment from a trail maintenance operation he had conducted 5 years earlier. A chainsaw he remembered losing during a previous clearing operation was discovered buried under vegetation, rusted and deteriorated as if it had been exposed to the elements for decades. His initials, carved into the saw's handle, were still visible under the corrosion, but the metal showed aging consistent with far longer exposure than the 5 years since he had lost it. The Park Service's official response to Jake's report was to classify the Sitka spruce trail as requiring specialized maintenance protocols and to assign all future clearing operations to rotating crews who would never work the same section twice. The rapid vegetation regrowth was attributed to unique microclimatic conditions and accelerated seasonal cycles that made normal maintenance schedules ineffective. Jake continued working trail maintenance in other areas of the park. But his experience on the Sitka Spruce Trail fundamentally changed his understanding of the forest environment. He began to notice other locations where time seemed to behave strangely. Areas where equipment aged prematurely, vegetation growth patterns defied seasonal expectations, and maintenance work required constant repetition due to impossible rates of natural reclamation. The Sitka Spruce Trail remains open to hikers, but maintenance operations now follow strict new protocols. Work crews are rotated frequently. No team works the same section more than once per season, and all equipment must be accounted for daily to prevent loss and mysterious aging. Photographic documentation is required for all work, and any signs of accelerated vegetation regrowth must be reported immediately to park headquarters. Dr. Chen's ongoing research into the trail's ecosystem has produced dozens of scientific papers, but no definitive explanation for the temporal acceleration affecting vegetation growth. Her current theory suggests that certain locations in old-growth forests may experience temporal anomalies, where natural processes operate according to different time frames than the surrounding environment. The mechanism behind these anomalies remains unknown, but their effects on human activity are consistently documented and impossible to ignore. Today, Jake works as a senior maintenance supervisor training new crews throughout Olympic National Park. When teaching young workers about the challenges of forest maintenance, he always includes a warning about the Sitka Spruce Trail and other locations where nature seems to operate according to its own timeline. There are places in the old-growth forest where time moves differently, he tells them, where decades can pass in a single night, where your work disappears faster than you can complete it, and where the forest reclaims human effort with a speed that defies everything we think we know about the natural world. The trees remember every cut, every disturbance, every human presence, and in some places, they're determined to erase all evidence that we were ever there. The abandoned equipment found throughout the Sitka Spruce Trail area now serves as a sobering reminder of the phenomenon's ongoing effects. Chainsaws, hand tools, and personal items from decades of maintenance operations lie scattered throughout the forest, aged and deteriorated far beyond their chronological age. Silent testimony to a place where human time and forest time operate according to completely different rules. Let's move to our sixth story. The summer of 2018 was when Search and Rescue Coordinator Miriam Rose learned that some missing persons cases lead to places where GPS coordinates have no meaning, and rescue dogs follow scents that shouldn't exist. What began as a routine search for a lost child in the Great Smoky Mountains became a terrifying discovery that certain areas of wilderness operate according to spatial rules that defy all understanding of geography and navigation. 8-year-old Miriam Rose had been camping with her family at the Elkmont campground when she wandered away from their campsite on the morning of July 14th. Her parents, David and Lisa Chen, reported her missing at 9:30 a.m. after a 15-minute search of the immediate area failed to locate her. Miriam Rose was described as an experienced young camper who understood basic wilderness safety, knew to stay near water sources if lost, and would respond to her name being called. The family had camped at Elkmont multiple times, and Miriam Rose was familiar with the area's trail system and landmarks. Search and Rescue Coordinator Elena Martinez had been managing search operations in the Great Smoky Mountains for over 14 years, handling hundreds of missing person cases with a success rate that made her one of the most respected SR coordinators in the National Park Service. Her systematic approach to wilderness searches combined cutting-edge technology with decades of experience understanding how lost individuals behave in mountainous terrain. The search for Miriam Rose would challenge every principle Elena thought she understood about navigation, tracking, and the fundamental nature of space itself. The initial search deployment followed established protocols for missing children. Elena coordinated 6 search teams covering a 2-mile radius from the Chen family's campsite, with each team assigned specific grid patterns designed to ensure comprehensive coverage of the most likely areas where Miriam Rose might have wandered. K-9 units were deployed immediately, led by veteran handler Officer Mark Stevens and his German Shepherd Rex, a dog with over 8 years of search and rescue experience and an impressive record of successful recoveries. Rex picked up Miriam Rose's scent immediately from clothing provided by her parents, and his behavior indicated a strong, fresh trail leading northeast from the campground toward the Gatlinburg trail system. The trail was well-defined and heavily traveled, making it a logical direction for a lost child to follow. Elena felt confident that they would locate Miriam Rose within hours, as Rex's tracking abilities had never failed to lead rescue teams to missing persons in similar circumstances. The first indication that something was wrong came when Rex's behavior changed dramatically after following the scent trail for approximately 1 mile. The experienced rescue dog, known for his focused determination and consistent tracking, performance suddenly became agitated and confused. He would follow the scent for 50 yards, then stop and whimper, looking back at his handler with what Mark Stevens described as genuine distress and confusion. Mark had worked with Rex for 6 years and knew the dog's behavior patterns intimately. Rex's confusion wasn't consistent with typical scent dispersal or trail contamination. Instead, the dog seemed to be encountering something that violated his understanding of how scents should behave. It's like he's following a trail that keeps changing direction in ways that don't make sense. Mark radioed to Elena. He'll track confidently for a short distance. Then the scent seems to jump to a completely different location with no transition or continuity. Elena's radio communication with the other search teams revealed that Rex wasn't the only K-9 unit experiencing problems. 3 other rescue dogs were showing similar behavior patterns. Confident tracking followed by sudden confusion and distress. Each dog was following what appeared to be Miriam Rose's scent, but their paths crossed and recrossed in ways that defied logical movement patterns for a lost child. The situation became more puzzling when Elena compared the GPS coordinates being reported by different search teams. According to their electronic navigation systems, multiple teams were searching the same geographic coordinates simultaneously. Yet none of the teams could see or communicate with each other, despite being in open terrain with clear sight lines. Team leaders reported being in identical locations. The same clearing, the same rock formations, the same distinctive tree groupings. But their visual contact with other teams was impossible. Elena's radio transcript from that afternoon captures her growing concern as she attempted to coordinate search efforts that seemed to be occurring in parallel dimensions. Base to Team 3, please confirm your coordinates. GPS shows you at the same location as Team 1, but Team 1 reports no visual contact with your position. Team 3's response was immediate and troubling. Confirmed coordinates are accurate. We're in a large clearing with distinctive twin oak trees and a stream on the eastern edge. No sign of other search teams despite clear visibility in all directions. The description matched exactly with Team 1's reported location. Yet the 2 teams remained unable to locate each other, despite being equipped with radios, whistles, and signal flares. Elena's experience told her that GPS systems could malfunction, but the detailed environmental descriptions provided by each team were too specific and consistent to be coincidental. Something was preventing search teams from occupying the same physical space, despite their navigation systems indicating identical coordinates. The most disturbing development came when Rex and the other rescue dogs began following scent trails that led in physically impossible directions. Mark Stevens reported that Rex was tracking Miriam Rose's scent up a steep rock face that no child could have climbed. Then the trail seemed to continue from the base of a cliff located half a mile away, with no connecting path between the 2 points. Other handlers reported similar impossible tracking patterns. Scent trails that jumped across ravines, continued from treetops to ground level, and led to locations that couldn't be reached by normal human movement. Elena's decision to request helicopter support revealed the most chilling aspect of the search operation. The aerial team, equipped with thermal imaging and high-resolution cameras, could clearly see the 6 ground search teams from above. But their locations didn't correspond to the GPS coordinates being reported by the teams themselves. According to the helicopter crew, the search teams were spread across a much larger area than their navigation systems indicated, and some teams appeared to be searching in locations that didn't exist on current topographical maps. Ground teams report being in clearings and following established trails that our aerial mapping doesn't show. The helicopter pilot radioed to Elena. "We can see the searchers moving through terrain that appears different from what our charts indicate should be there. Some teams are searching in areas our maps show as impassable gorges or cliff faces. But from above, they appear to be in open woodland." The disconnect between ground-level experience and aerial observation suggested that the search teams were somehow operating in a version of the landscape that existed according to different geographical rules. Elena's training had prepared her for equipment failures, weather complications, and challenging terrain, but not for a situation where the fundamental nature of space itself seemed to be unreliable. As evening approached, Elena made the difficult decision to recall all search teams to base camp for regrouping and equipment assessment. However, the return journey revealed that the spatial distortions affecting the search weren't limited to tracking operations. Teams that should have been able to return to base camp within 30 minutes found themselves walking for hours without making progress toward their objective. Team 4, led by experienced ranger Carlos Mendez, reported following clearly marked trails that should have led directly back to Elkmont Campground, but instead seemed to loop endlessly through unfamiliar terrain. "We've been hiking toward base camp for 3 hours," Carlos radioed at 7:30 p.m. "Our GPS shows we're getting closer, but the landmarks don't match our outbound route. We're passing the same distinctive rock formations repeatedly, but from different angles each time." Elena's radio logs from that evening document similar reports from all 6 search teams. Each group became lost while attempting to return to base camp, despite following GPS guidance and traveling through terrain they had covered earlier. In the day, the familiar landscape seemed to have rearranged itself, creating endless loops and impossible geographical relationships that prevented normal navigation. The breakthrough in understanding the phenomenon came when Elena realized that the search teams were hearing sounds that corresponded to their reports of Miriam Rose's location. Multiple teams reported hearing a child's laughter echoing from various directions. But the acoustic properties suggested the sounds were coming from underground. Ground-penetrating radar brought in for the investigation revealed extensive cave systems beneath the search area that weren't documented in any geological surveys of the region. The cave systems appeared to extend far beyond the known limestone formations in the Great Smoky Mountains, creating a vast underground network that might explain the impossible scent trails being followed by the rescue dogs. If Miriam Rose had somehow accessed these underground passages, her scent could theoretically emerge at multiple surface points, creating the confusing tracking patterns that had baffled the K9 units. Elena's decision to explore the cave entrances with a specialized underground rescue team revealed the most disturbing aspect of Miriam Rose's disappearance. The underground passages showed signs of recent human activity. Small footprints in the cave sediment, broken vegetation at entrance points, and fresh scratch marks on cave walls at a height consistent with a child's reach. But the cave system itself defied geological understanding, with passages that seemed to connect distant surface locations in ways that were impossible given the known topography of the area. Cave rescue specialist Dr. Jennifer Walsh, brought in to assess the underground search possibilities, reported finding evidence of temporal distortions similar to those affecting surface search operations. The cave system shows geological formations that shouldn't exist in this region, she reported to Elena. Limestone passages connecting to granite chambers, mineral deposits from different geological periods existing side by side, and acoustic properties that allow sound to carry between locations that are miles apart on the surface. The search for Miriam Rose continued for 6 days, during which rescue teams documented over 40 instances of spatial distortions, impossible navigation loops, and geographical anomalies that prevented normal search operations. Electronic equipment functioned normally, radio communication remained clear, but the fundamental relationships between location, distance, and direction seemed to operate according to unknown rules within the search area. On July 20th, 6 days after Miriam Rose's disappearance, she was found by a family of hikers at a trail junction nearly 15 miles from her family's campsite. She was in good health, adequately hydrated, and showed no signs of exposure or injury, despite having been missing for nearly a week. Her account of the missing time was limited by her age, but included references to walking in circles, hearing voices from under the ground, and seeing the same places over and over again. Medical examination revealed that Miriam Rose had consumed food and water during her missing period. But her clothing and equipment suggested she had been in a controlled environment rather than surviving outdoors. Most puzzling was her description of the people who had helped her. Park rangers who had given her food and shown her safe places to sleep. According to Miriam Rose, these rangers had told her they were looking for her family and would help her get home when the paths connected properly again. Elena's investigation into Miriam Rose's account revealed no record of Park Service personnel operating in the areas where the child reported receiving assistance. All park rangers in the region had been accounted for during the search operation, and none had encountered Miriam Rose during her missing period. The rangers she described didn't match any current Park Service employees, but their uniforms and equipment, as described by an 8-year-old child, matched historical Park Service gear from decades earlier. The official report on Miriam Rose's disappearance and recovery was classified under Special Circumstances Protocols, acknowledging the successful outcome while noting unusual environmental factors that complicated standard search procedures. Elena's detailed documentation of the spatial distortions and navigation anomalies was filed separately, establishing new protocols for search operations in areas where GPS reliability and normal geographical relationships couldn't be assumed. The search area where Miriam Rose disappeared has since been designated as requiring specialized navigation protocols for all rescue operations. Search teams working in the region now carry additional backup navigation equipment, maintain constant radio contact with aerial support, and operate under modified grid patterns designed to account for possible spatial distortions that could affect normal search procedures. Elena Rose continued her career as a search and rescue coordinator. But the case of young Miriam Rose fundamentally changed her approach to missing person operations. She began documenting other instances where search operations encountered geographical anomalies, discovering a pattern of cases where missing persons were recovered from locations that shouldn't have been accessible from their point of disappearance. When asked about the most challenging search operation of her career, Elena always returns to that July week when a little girl disappeared into a landscape that obeyed different rules of space and distance. Miriam Rose was never really lost, she says quietly. She was just walking through a version of the mountains that exists alongside our own, where distances mean something different and paths connect places that shouldn't be connected. The question isn't how we found her, it's how she found her way back to our version of the world, and whether the rangers who helped her are still out there, searching for missing children in a landscape that exists between the spaces we think we understand. Let's move to our seventh story. In the late fall of 2019, Research Station Inspector Gabriel Torres was making his final inspection of the isolated Whitmore High-Altitude Research Facility when he discovered that some places in the mountains exist outside the normal flow of time. What was supposed to be a routine facility shutdown before winter became a terrifying encounter with evidence that someone had been documenting his visit weeks before he had even planned to make the trip. The Whitmore Research Station sits at 11,200 feet elevation in a remote section of the Rocky Mountain National Park, accessible only by helicopter or a grueling 2-day hike through unmarked wilderness terrain. The facility had been established in 1987 to study high-altitude weather patterns and atmospheric conditions, operating seasonally from May through October before harsh winter conditions made the location uninhabitable. The station consisted of a main laboratory building, equipment storage shed, communications tower, and emergency shelter, all designed to withstand extreme mountain weather, while providing researchers with a stable platform for year-round data collection. Gabriel Torres had been assigned to conduct the annual pre-winter inspection of abandoned research facilities throughout the Rocky Mountain system, ensuring that equipment was properly secured, hazardous materials were removed, and buildings were prepared for months of isolation under heavy snow. The Whitmore Station was his final inspection of the season, scheduled for November 15, 2019. His assignment was straightforward: document the facility's condition, secure any sensitive equipment, and confirm that the station was ready for winter abandonment until the following spring. The facility had been officially evacuated on October 28th, when the last research team departed via helicopter after completing their seasonal atmospheric studies. According to Park Service records, no personnel had accessed the station since that date, and winter weather had already made helicopter access dangerous due to unpredictable wind conditions and early snowfall. Gabriel's inspection represented the final human contact with the Whitmore Station until spring weather would allow maintenance crews to return. Gabriel reached the research station on the afternoon of November 15th after a challenging solo hike through increasingly harsh weather conditions. The facility appeared exactly as expected. Buildings secured according to standard shutdown procedures, equipment covers in place, and no signs of recent human activity. His initial external inspection confirmed that the evacuation had been completed properly and that winter preparations were adequate for the harsh conditions expected at high altitude. The first anomaly became apparent when Gabriel entered the main laboratory building using his master key. Despite the facility having been abandoned for over 2 weeks, the building was warm, with heating systems running and interior lighting functioning normally. Standard shutdown procedures required all utilities to be disconnected before evacuation, both for safety reasons and to prevent unnecessary power consumption during the winter isolation period. Gabriel's inspection of the utility systems revealed that the heating and electrical systems had been manually restarted, with control settings optimized for efficient operation during cold weather. Someone with detailed knowledge of the facility systems had overridden the shutdown procedures and restored full operational status to the building. More puzzling was the evidence that this work had been done recently. The heating system showed signs of having been activated within the past 24 hours, based on thermal cycling patterns Gabriel recognized from his engineering background. The main laboratory space showed clear signs of recent occupancy. Coffee in the break area was still warm, with a half-finished cup sitting on the research desk next to an open notebook filled with detailed observations. The notebook contained entries dated November 14th through November 16th, dates that bracketed Gabriel's current inspection visit. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the content demonstrated intimate knowledge of both the research station systems and Gabriel's scheduled inspection procedures. Gabriel's growing alarm intensified as he read through the notebook entries, which described his inspection visit in precise detail, despite being dated before his arrival and extending into the future. The November 14th entry noted his planned arrival time, his hiking route to the facility, and even his decision to check the heating systems first upon entering the building. The November 15th entry, dated for the current day, described his reaction to finding the notebook and his increasing concern about the timeline discrepancies. Most disturbing was the November 16th entry, dated for the following day, which described events that hadn't yet occurred but felt inevitably accurate. According to the unknown author, Gabriel would discover additional evidence of recent occupancy throughout the facility, would find research equipment running experiments that had been completed and stored weeks earlier, and would encounter phenomena that challenged his understanding of causality and time itself. Gabriel's training emphasized the importance of thorough documentation during facility inspections, particularly when unusual circumstances were encountered. He photographed every page of the mysterious notebook, documenting the handwriting, dates, and specific predictions about his visit. The level of detail in the entries suggested that whoever had written them possessed not only intimate knowledge of the research station, but also precise information about Gabriel's inspection procedures and personal habits. The equipment storage shed revealed even more disturbing evidence of recent activity. Sensitive research instruments that had been carefully packed and stored for winter were unpacked and operating, displaying data from atmospheric monitoring sessions that were supposedly completed before the facility's evacuation. The equipment showed current readings from sensors that should have been disconnected and stored, indicating that someone had been conducting unauthorized research operations at the abandoned facility. Gabriel's examination of the sensor data revealed impossible readings that violated known atmospheric science principles. Barometric pressure readings showed variations that couldn't occur at the station's altitude. Temperature sensors recorded measurements outside the possible range for the current weather conditions, and wind speed instruments displayed data suggesting atmospheric disturbances that hadn't been reported by any regional weather monitoring stations. More troubling was the timestamp data from the research equipment. The sensors showed continuous operation dating back to before the facility's supposed evacuation, but the data patterns indicated research activities that could only have been conducted by someone with advanced knowledge of atmospheric science. The experiments being conducted were sophisticated enough to require doctorate-level expertise. Yet no authorized personnel were supposed to have access to the facility. Gabriel's investigation of the communications equipment revealed that someone had been using the station's radio systems to transmit research data to unknown recipients. Transmission logs showed regular data uploads occurring throughout the period when the facility was supposed to be abandoned, with communication protocols that didn't match any known park service or research institution procedures. The radio equipment had been modified with additional components that enhanced its range and capability far beyond standard research station requirements. The emergency shelter building contained the most unsettling discovery. Gabriel found personal belongings that appeared to belong to him. Clothing in his size, toiletries matching his personal preferences, and equipment identical to his own gear, but showing signs of extended use and wear. The belongings were arranged as if someone had been living at the station while anticipating his arrival, preparing accommodations based on detailed knowledge of his personal needs and habits. A journal left open on the shelter's desk contained entries written in Gabriel's own handwriting, describing experiences and observations from his current inspection visit. The entries were dated for the period of his visit, but contained details about discoveries he hadn't yet made and reactions to events that hadn't yet occurred. Reading his own thoughts and observations written in his own hand, describing experiences he hadn't had, created a disorienting sense of temporal displacement that challenged his grasp on reality. The journal entries described Gabriel's growing realization that the Whitmore research station existed in a state of temporal flux, where past, present, and future research activities occurred simultaneously. According to the journal written in his own handwriting, the facility had become unstuck from normal time flow, allowing researchers from different periods to work alongside each other without direct interaction, but with awareness of each other's presence and activities. Gabriel's radio attempts to contact Park Service headquarters were unsuccessful due to atmospheric interference. But he recorded detailed audio logs describing his discoveries for later transmission. His voice recordings captured his increasing disorientation as he encountered more evidence that his inspection visit had been anticipated, documented, and prepared for by someone with impossible foreknowledge of his actions and decisions. The most disturbing revelation came when Gabriel discovered that the research being conducted at the station was focused on temporal distortions and causality paradoxes. Laboratory notebooks contained detailed studies of time flow anomalies at high-altitude locations, with specific focus on the Whitmore station's unique atmospheric and geological conditions. The research suggested that certain combinations of elevation, atmospheric pressure, and geological formations could create localized distortions in the normal progression of time. According to the research data, the Whitmore station had been experiencing temporal anomalies since its establishment, with effects becoming more pronounced over the decades as the facility's sensitive equipment began detecting and amplifying the natural time distortions. Researchers working at the station had gradually become aware that their work was occurring simultaneously across multiple time periods, allowing collaboration between past and future iterations of the research project. Gabriel's exploration of the facility revealed evidence of this temporal collaboration in the form of research notes that responded to questions posed by previous researchers, equipment modifications that had been designed by future iterations of the research team, and experimental procedures that incorporated knowledge that couldn't have been available when the experiments were originally conducted. The final entry in the notebook Gabriel had discovered upon arrival was dated November 17th, 2 days in the future, and contained a message addressed directly to him. The unknown author acknowledged Gabriel's growing understanding of the facility's temporal nature and warned him that extended exposure to the time distortions could result in permanent displacement from his original timeline. The message advised him to complete his inspection quickly and leave the facility before becoming trapped in the temporal loop that had claimed previous visitors. Gabriel's decision to evacuate immediately was complicated by the discovery that his hiking equipment had been unpacked and redistributed throughout the facility, as if someone had been using his gear during an extended stay. His backpack contained supplies he didn't remember packing, including food and equipment sufficient for a much longer visit than his planned overnight inspection. Maps in his navigation kit showed route modifications in his own handwriting, directing him to alternate paths he had never explored. The journey back to civilization became a race against time as Gabriel realized that each hour spent at the Whitmore station made it more difficult to distinguish between his own memories and experiences that belonged to other temporal iterations of his visit. His radio contact with Park headquarters, when finally restored at lower elevation, revealed that his inspection visit had been extended without authorization, and that search and rescue teams were being organized to locate him after he failed to report in, according to his original schedule. Gabriel's official report on the Whitmore Research Station inspection was classified immediately upon submission, with copies restricted to personnel with specialized clearance for temporal anomaly investigations. His detailed documentation of the facility's condition led to its permanent closure and the establishment of new protocols for inspecting research facilities in locations where temporal distortions had been reported. The research equipment left at the Whitmore station continues to operate autonomously, transmitting data to unknown recipients and conducting experiments designed by researchers who may exist in different time periods. Automated systems maintain the facility's heating and power, suggesting that the temporal distortions have created a self-sustaining loop where the station's operational needs are met by activities occurring across multiple time frames. Gabriel Torres continued his career as a facility inspector for the National Park Service. But his experience at the Whitmore station fundamentally changed his understanding of time and causality. He began documenting other locations where inspection visits revealed evidence of temporal anomalies. Discovering a pattern of research facilities and remote installations where normal time flow appeared to be disrupted by combinations of elevation, isolation, and sensitive scientific equipment. When asked about the most disturbing inspection of his career, Gabriel always returns to that November day when he discovered his own handwriting describing experiences he hadn't yet had at a research station that existed simultaneously across multiple time periods. "Time isn't as fixed as we assume," he says quietly. "In places where the boundary between past and future becomes thin, you can find yourself working alongside versions of yourself from different time periods, all trying to understand the same mysteries but from different temporal perspectives. The question isn't what the researchers at Whitmore Station were studying. It's whether they're still there, still conducting their experiments across time, and whether anyone will ever be able to distinguish between the past and future iterations of their work." The Whitmore Research Station remains closed to all personnel, monitored only by remote sensing equipment that confirms the facility's continued autonomous operation. The temporal research conducted there continues to produce data that arrives at Park Service headquarters before the experiments that generated it have been completed, creating an ongoing paradox that challenges fundamental assumptions about causality and the nature of scientific investigation in locations where time itself becomes a variable in the research process. Let's move to our 8th story. In the scorching summer of 2020, wildlife specialist Dr. Amanda Hayes was investigating reports of unusual predator activity in the remote backcountry of Joshua Tree National Park, when she discovered that some creatures in the desert have learned to hunt in ways that defy biological understanding. What began as routine tracking of reported animal encounters became a terrifying documentation of something that was studying human behavior and adapting its hunting methods with an intelligence that shouldn't exist in any known species. The Mojave Desert section of Joshua Tree National Park spans over 400,000 acres of harsh, unforgiving terrain where temperatures routinely exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit during summer months. The ecosystem supports a variety of specialized wildlife adapted to extreme heat and limited water sources, including coyotes, mountain lions, desert bighorn sheep, and various species of venomous snakes and spiders. Dr. Hayes had been assigned to investigate a series of disturbing reports from experienced desert hikers who described being stalked by something that exhibited hunting behaviors unlike any known desert predator. The reports began appearing in late June 2020, when 3 separate groups of backpackers filed incident reports describing encounters with an unknown creature that followed them for hours across open desert terrain. The hikers were all experienced desert enthusiasts familiar with local wildlife behavior, and their descriptions of the stalking incidents were remarkably consistent despite occurring in different areas of the park over a 2-week period. The first incident involved experienced desert photographers, Mike and Jennifer Walsh, who were documenting sunrise conditions near the Chala Cactus Garden when they noticed something following them at a distance of approximately 200 yards. The creature maintained perfect spacing behind them as they moved through the desert, never getting closer but never falling behind. Even when they deliberately changed direction or altered their pace to test its behavior. Mike's telephoto photography equipment allowed him to capture distant images of what appeared to be a quadrupedal animal roughly the size of a large dog, but with an unusual gait and posture that didn't match any known desert species. The creature moved with mechanical precision, maintaining its distance with mathematical accuracy regardless of terrain changes or obstacles. Most disturbing was its apparent ability to predict their movements, positioning itself to maintain optimal tracking distance even when they made spontaneous, directional changes. The second incident occurred 5 days later when solo hiker Robert Chen reported being followed for over 6 hours during a challenging trek through the Wonderland of Rocks formation. Chen, a former military reconnaissance specialist with extensive desert survival training, recognized immediately that he was being stalked by something that understood tactical pursuit techniques. The creature maintained visual contact while using terrain features for concealment, demonstrated patience during Chen's rest stops, and showed what appeared to be strategic thinking in its positioning. Chen's military background allowed him to conduct counter-surveillance techniques that revealed disturbing details about his pursuer. When he used reflective surfaces to observe the creature without direct visual contact, it seemed to recognize his awareness and adjusted its behavior accordingly. When he attempted to double back and identify his tracker, the creature anticipated his route and repositioned itself to avoid detection. Most unnerving was its apparent understanding of Chen's tactical knowledge. It countered every evasion technique he employed as if it had studied human military procedures. The third incident provided the most detailed documentation when family camping group the Hendersons, parents Tom and Sarah with their teenage children, encountered the creature during an overnight backpacking trip to the Lost Palms Oasis. Their experience differed from previous reports because the stalking behavior continued through the night, allowing them to observe the creature's activities during darkness when most desert predators are most active. The Hendersons' account described a creature that exhibited hunting behaviors that seemed designed specifically for human prey. Unlike natural predators that hunt based on instinct and opportunity, this creature demonstrated strategic planning and psychological manipulation. It would appear briefly at the edge of their campfire light, just long enough to establish its presence, then withdraw to create anxiety and uncertainty about its location and intentions. Dr. Hayes' investigation began with a comprehensive review of the incident reports and photographic evidence provided by the witnesses. Her analysis of Mike Walsh's telephoto images revealed anatomical features that didn't correspond to any known desert wildlife species. The creature's limb proportions, skeletal structure, and muscular development suggested adaptations for sustained pursuit hunting rather than the ambush tactics typical of desert predators. More troubling was the creature's apparent understanding of human psychology and behavior patterns. Each stalking incident demonstrated knowledge of how humans react to being pursued. The creature maintained psychological pressure through intermittent visibility, used terrain to create anxiety about potential ambush sites, and showed patience that suggested it was studying its targets rather than simply hunting for food. Dr. Hayes' field investigation began in early July 2020, when she established a research camp in the area where the stalking incidents had been reported. Her objective was to locate and observe the unknown creature while documenting its behavior patterns and biological characteristics, using motion-activated cameras, thermal sensors, and tracking equipment. She planned to conduct a systematic study of the creature's activities and territorial range. The first evidence of the creature's presence came within hours of establishing her research camp. Motion sensors detected something moving through the area during late afternoon, but the thermal signatures were inconsistent with known desert wildlife. The creature appeared to generate less body heat than expected for its apparent size, and its movement pattern suggested it was conducting reconnaissance of her research setup, rather than simply passing through the area. Dr. Hayes's trail cameras captured the first clear footage of the creature, revealing details that challenged her understanding of desert ecology and predator behavior. The animal appeared to be a hybrid of familiar desert species. Canine-like locomotion combined with feline hunting postures and reptilian patience. Its coat adapted to desert camouflage with a sophistication that surpassed natural evolutionary development, changing color patterns to match different terrain features as it moved. The creature's behavioral analysis revealed intelligence that exceeded any known desert predator. It systematically investigated Dr. Hayes's research equipment, showing curiosity about camera placement and sensor locations that suggested understanding of their purpose. Most disturbing was its apparent recognition that it was being studied. The creature began altering its movement patterns to avoid detection, while simultaneously conducting its own observation of the research activities. Dr. Hayes's field notes documented increasingly sophisticated interactions with the creature over a 2-week period. The animal demonstrated learning abilities that allowed it to adapt to her research methods, countering her attempts at observation and documentation with strategies that seemed designed to maintain its mystery while continuing its study of human behavior. The creature's hunting methodology became clear when Dr. Hayes observed its interactions with a group of day hikers who entered the research area. The animal followed the hikers for several hours, maintaining the same precise distance and positioning that had been reported in previous incidents. But Dr. Hayes's observation revealed that the creature wasn't hunting for food. It was collecting behavioral data about human movement patterns, decision-making processes, and psychological responses to being stalked. The most chilling discovery came when Dr. Hayes realized that the creature was conducting controlled experiments on human subjects. It would vary its stalking techniques with different groups of hikers, testing their reactions to different levels of visibility, various stalking distances, and alternative psychological pressure tactics. The creature was learning which methods produced the most useful data about human behavior, while refining its ability to create fear and confusion without triggering flight responses that would end at the observation period. Dr. Hayes's documentation of the creature's activities revealed a pattern of behavior that suggested it was part of a larger intelligence-gathering operation. The animal demonstrated knowledge of human schedules, recognizing when new groups of hikers were likely to enter its territory. It showed preference for stalking experienced desert travelers, apparently finding their reactions more informative than those of novice hikers who might panic and disrupt the observation process. The creature's physical capabilities exceeded those of any known desert predator. It could maintain pursuit activities for hours without showing signs of fatigue, operated effectively in extreme heat that would disable most animals, and demonstrated endurance that suggested supernatural rather than biological origins. Its tracking abilities allowed it to follow human scent trails across rock surfaces and through areas where no physical evidence of passage should remain. Dr. Hayes's research revealed that the creature had been active in the Joshua Tree area for much longer than the recent incident report suggested. Park Service archives contained similar stalking reports dating back over 15 years, all describing the same precise tracking behavior and psychological manipulation tactics. The creature appeared to be conducting a long-term study of human desert survival behavior, gathering data across multiple hiking seasons and different types of desert visitors. The investigation's most disturbing revelation came when Dr. Hayes discovered that the creature had been documenting its observations. Hidden cache sites throughout its territory contained what appeared to be primitive record-keeping materials. Organized collections of personal items taken from hikers, detailed arrangements of tracking evidence, and systematic displays that suggested the creature was maintaining research records of its human subjects. The cache sites revealed the scope of the creature's intelligence-gathering activities. Personal items from dozens of hikers were organized by date and individual, suggesting the creature could distinguish between different humans and maintain long-term records of their behavior patterns. Equipment modifications found at the sites indicated the creature was learning to use human tools and technology to enhance its observation capabilities. Dr. Hayes's final field report documented her conclusion that the creature represented an unknown species that had evolved specifically to study human behavior in desert environments. Its hunting methods weren't designed for predation, but for data collection, suggesting an intelligence that understood the value of human behavioral research for purposes that remained unclear. The creature's apparent ability to learn and adapt its methods based on human responses indicated that it was conducting ongoing refinement of its research techniques. Each stalking incident provided data that improved its ability to observe human subjects without triggering defensive behaviors that would compromise the study. The creature had become an expert at maintaining psychological pressure while avoiding direct confrontation that might end its observation opportunities. The Park Service's response to Dr. Hayes's report was to classify the creature as a sensitive wildlife species, requiring special protection protocols. New guidelines for desert hiking recommend traveling in groups, maintaining constant awareness of surroundings, and reporting any signs of persistent animal tracking to park authorities immediately. The creature's territorial range has been designated as requiring enhanced safety precautions for all recreational activities. Dr. Hayes continued her wildlife research in other desert environments, but her experience with the Joshua Tree creature fundamentally changed her understanding of predator intelligence and hunting evolution. She began documenting similar reports from other desert parks, discovering a pattern of creatures that had evolved beyond natural predation to become researchers of human behavior. The creature continues its activities in Joshua Tree National Park, with hikers reporting stalking incidents that match the same behavioral patterns Dr. Hayes documented. Park rangers now maintain specialized tracking protocols for monitoring the creature's activities, but attempts at direct contact or capture have proven unsuccessful. The animal's intelligence allows it to avoid human research efforts while continuing its own study of desert visitors. When asked about the most unsettling research of her career, Dr. Hayes always returns to those July weeks when she realized she was studying a creature that was simultaneously studying her. "We assume that we're the apex intelligence in any environment," she says quietly. "But in the deep desert, where survival requires adaptation and learning, something has evolved that views humans not as prey, but as research subjects. It's conducting its own behavioral studies, gathering data about our psychology and survival strategies for purposes we can't comprehend. The question isn't what it wants to learn about us. It's what it plans to do with all the information it's been collecting about human behavior in the wilderness for the past 15 years. The stalking incidents continue in Joshua Tree National Park, with the creature maintaining its research activities while evolving its methods based on ongoing observation of human visitors. Each encounter provides it with additional data about human desert survival behavior, contributing to a growing database of information about our species that may serve purposes far beyond anything we can currently imagine. Let's move to our 9th story. In the frigid winter of 2017, cave rescue specialist Marcus Reed was responding to an emergency call about trapped cavers in Kentucky's Mammoth Cave system when he discovered that some underground passages exist according to their own rules of physics and geography. What began as a routine technical rescue became a terrifying journey through cave passages that changed their configuration based on the intentions of those who entered them, leading to places that shouldn't exist beneath the earth. The emergency call came in at 2:30 a.m. on February 14th. when the Kentucky State Police received a distress signal from an experienced caving group, led by Dr. Patricia Williams, a geology professor who had been exploring cave systems for over 20 years. The group's emergency beacon had activated automatically in a section of Mammoth Cave known as the Devil's Kitchen, a challenging passage system approximately 3 miles from the nearest entrance and requiring technical rope work to access safely. Marcus Reed had been specializing in cave rescue operations for 12 years, with extensive experience in the complex limestone formations that make Kentucky's cave systems both beautiful and treacherous. His expertise included technical rope rescue, underground navigation, and the psychological challenges of working in confined spaces where a single mistake could trap rescuers alongside the victims they were trying to help. The Devil's Kitchen section of Mammoth Cave was familiar territory for Marcus, a network of narrow passages and vertical drops that attracted experienced cavers seeking technical challenges. The area was well mapped, with established safety protocols and known hazard points documented in detailed cave surveys. Dr. Williams' group had filed proper permits and safety plans, indicating they were prepared for the technical requirements of the passage system. Marcus assembled his rescue team within an hour of receiving the emergency call, including cave rescue specialists Tom Chen and Sarah Martinez, both with over 8 years of underground rescue experience. The team's equipment load included specialized cave rescue gear, emergency medical supplies, and communication equipment designed to function in the electromagnetic interference conditions common in deep cave systems. The initial descent into Mammoth Cave proceeded normally, with the rescue team following established routes through familiar passages toward the Devil's Kitchen area. Their progress was steady but cautious, as cave rescue operations required careful attention to rope placement, air quality monitoring, and continuous communication with surface support teams. The first indication that something was wrong came when Marcus's team reached what should have been a well-known landmark passage called the Cathedral Room, a large chamber that served as a navigation reference point for accessing deeper cave sections. The chamber was larger than their maps indicated, with additional passages leading in directions that weren't documented in any cave survey Marcus had studied. Marcus's cave navigation relied on detailed topographical knowledge developed over years of underground exploration, and his immediate recognition that the cathedral room's configuration was wrong triggered professional alarm. Cave passages don't change their basic structure. Limestone formations remain stable over geological time periods, and passages that have been mapped and surveyed retain their characteristics indefinitely. The team's GPS equipment, designed specifically for underground navigation, showed readings that corresponded with their expected location, but the physical cave structure around them didn't match the documented geography. Additional passages extended from the cathedral room in directions that should have intersected with other known cave sections. Yet the team could see no evidence of the familiar limestone formations that served as navigation landmarks. Marcus made the decision to continue toward the Devil's Kitchen following their original route. But the familiar passages seemed to extend much further than expected. Sections that should have required 30 minutes to traverse took over an hour, despite maintaining normal pace and encountering no significant obstacles. The cave system appeared to have expanded, with familiar passages stretched to accommodate distances that were impossible given the known geology of the area. The rescue team's radio communication with surface support began experiencing unusual interference patterns that didn't correspond to typical electromagnetic disruption in cave environments. Instead of the gradual signal degradation expected at increasing depths, their radio contact would alternate between perfect clarity and complete silence, without any correlation to their location or the limestone density above them. When Marcus's team finally reached the Devil's Kitchen area, they discovered that Dr. Williams' group was not where their emergency beacon indicated they should be. The beacon signal was strong and appeared to be coming from a passage that the rescue team's maps showed as a dead-end chamber with no exit routes. However, the physical passage continued far beyond its documented terminus, extending into cave sections that weren't supposed to exist. The search for the trapped cavers led Marcus's team through passage configurations that violated their understanding of cave formation geology. Chambers connected in sequences that formed impossible loops, with paths that seemed to circle back on themselves while somehow leading to new areas they had never encountered before. Water flow patterns, which should provide reliable navigation references in cave systems, indicated drainage directions that couldn't exist given the known topography above ground. Marcus's extensive cave rescue experience included training in the psychological effects of underground environments, including spatial disorientation and the claustrophobic stress that could affect judgment during extended operations. However, the disorientation his team was experiencing went beyond normal psychological factors. The cave passages were behaving in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about three-dimensional space. The breakthrough in locating Dr. Williams' group came when Marcus realized that their emergency beacon signal was coming from directly below their current position, but through passages that his maps showed as completely separate cave systems with no connecting routes. The rescue team's investigation revealed newly opened passages that seemed to have formed recently, creating connections between cave sections that had previously been isolated from each other. Dr. Williams's group was found in a large chamber that couldn't exist according to any geological survey of the Mammoth Cave System. The chamber was located at a depth and position that should have placed it within solid limestone bedrock. Yet, it was a fully formed cave space, with active water features and mineral formations that indicated long-term geological development. The trapped cavers' account of their emergency added another layer of impossibility to the rescue operation. According to Dr. Williams, their group had been following a familiar route through the Devil's Kitchen when they discovered that the return passages they had used to enter the area were no longer accessible. Passages that had been opened during their inbound journey were now blocked by limestone formations that appeared to have been in place for centuries. Dr. Williams, with her geological expertise, was particularly disturbed by the mineral formations blocking their exit routes. The limestone structures showed evidence of long-term water erosion and mineral deposition that should have required thousands of years to develop. Yet they were certain these formations hadn't existed during their entry into the cave system just 6 hours earlier. Marcus's examination of the blocked passages confirmed Dr. Williams's observations. The limestone formations were genuine geological structures with mineral deposits and erosion patterns consistent with ancient cave development. But their locations made no sense given the established cave surveys and the recent access used by the trapped cavers. The rescue operation became further complicated when Marcus discovered that the passages his team had used to reach the trapped cavers were no longer available for the return journey. Routes that had been open and safely navigable during their descent were now either blocked by new limestone formations or had apparently never existed, despite detailed documentation of their use during the rescue approach. Marcus's team found themselves in the same situation as the trapped cavers, surrounded by a cave system that seemed to reconfigure itself based on the intentions and movements of those within it. Passages that led toward the surface during rescue operations became dead ends when used for evacuation attempts, while new routes opened that led deeper into unmapped sections of the cave system. The cave rescue became an exercise in adapting to an environment that operated according to unknown rules of spatial configuration. Marcus's team discovered that their success in navigating the changing passage system depended on their intentions and expectations, rather than traditional cave navigation techniques. Passages remained open and accessible when approached with specific purposes, but closed or redirected when used for different objectives. The psychological impact of the shifting cave environment tested the mental resilience of both the rescue team and the trapped cavers. Marcus's training had prepared him for the challenges of working in confined spaces, but not for an environment where the fundamental nature of space itself was unreliable and responsive to human consciousness. The successful evacuation of all personnel occurred only after Marcus's team abandoned traditional cave navigation methods and began treating the cave system as if it were responding to their rescue intentions. Passages that had been impassable opened when approached with the clear purpose of reaching the surface, while routes that might have led to further exploration remained blocked or redirected. The return journey to the surface took place through cave passages that didn't appear on any survey maps and couldn't be relocated during subsequent investigation attempts. The rescue team and the cavers they had saved emerged through a cave entrance that was documented as being sealed decades earlier, suggesting that the cave system could modify not only its internal configuration, but also its connections to the surface world. Marcus's official rescue report was classified under special circumstances protocols, acknowledging the successful evacuation of all personnel while noting unusual geological conditions that complicated standard cave rescue procedures. His detailed documentation of the shifting passage configurations was filed separately, contributing to a growing database of cave rescue operations that had encountered impossible spatial phenomena. The Devil's Kitchen area of Mammoth Cave has since been designated as requiring specialized navigation protocols for all exploration activities. Cave rescue teams operating in the region now carry additional safety equipment and maintain constant communication with multiple surface support teams to account for possible passage reconfigurations that could affect normal evacuation routes. Marcus Reed continued his career in cave rescue operations, but his experience in the shifting passages of Mammoth Cave fundamentally changed his approach to underground navigation and rescue planning. He began documenting other cave systems where rescue operations had encountered spatial anomalies, discovering a pattern of limestone formations that seemed to respond to human presence and intentions. The trapped cavers from Dr. Williams' group all continued their cave exploration activities, but with a new understanding that certain underground environments might operate according to rules that transcend normal geological principles. Dr. Williams has since focused her geological research on cave systems that show evidence of spatial instability, documenting formations that seem to exist in a state of constant reconfiguration. When asked about the most challenging rescue of his career, Marcus always returns to that February night, when he learned that some caves exist as living entities that respond to the intentions of those who enter them. "We assume that caves are static geological formations," he says quietly. But deep underground, in places where limestone has been shaped by water and time for millions of years, some passages have developed a kind of consciousness that allows them to respond to human presence. The cave wasn't trying to trap us. It was trying to understand why we were there and what we intended to do. Once we learned to communicate our rescue purpose clearly, the passages opened to help us complete our mission. The question isn't how the cave passages moved. It's whether they're still down there, still learning about human intentions, still deciding who deserves to find their way back to the surface. Cave rescue operations in the Mammoth Cave system continue under enhanced safety protocols, with rescue teams maintaining awareness that certain cave sections may respond to the intentions and psychological state of those who enter them. The Devil's Kitchen area remains accessible to experienced cavers, but with the understanding that successful navigation may depend as much on mental clarity and purposeful intention as on traditional cave exploration techniques. Let's move to our 10th story. The isolated summer of 2021 was when fire lookout observer Nathan Cross discovered that some wildfires burn according to their own timeline and serve purposes beyond simple destruction. What began as routine fire monitoring from his remote tower in the Montana wilderness became a terrifying realization that certain fires communicate through smoke patterns and carry messages from places that exist outside normal reality. The Glacier Peak Fire Tower stands at 8,400 feet elevation on a remote mountain summit, accessible only by helicopter or a grueling 3-day hike through unmarked wilderness terrain. Nathan Cross had been assigned to the isolated position for his third consecutive fire season, drawn to the solitude and the critical responsibility of early wildfire detection across over 50,000 acres of pristine Montana forest. The tower's strategic location provided panoramic views of the surrounding wilderness, with high-powered optics and communication equipment that made it possible to spot fires within minutes of ignition and coordinate response efforts across the entire region. Nathan's expertise in fire behavior and meteorological patterns had made him one of the most reliable fire lookouts in the Montana system. With a perfect record of early detection and accurate location reporting that had prevented dozens of small fires from becoming major conflagrations, his ability to read smoke patterns, predict fire spread based on terrain and weather conditions, and maintain calm communication during emergency situations had earned him the respect of firefighting crews throughout the state. The fire season of 2021 had been particularly challenging due to record drought conditions and extreme heat that created perfect conditions for rapid fire spread. Nathan's daily observations documented temperature readings consistently above 95 degrees, humidity levels below 15%, and wind patterns that could turn a minor grass fire into a forest-consuming disaster within hours. His vigilance during these dangerous conditions was essential for protecting the vast wilderness areas that had no other early warning systems. The first anomaly occurred on July the 23rd, when Nathan observed smoke rising from coordinates that his detailed topographical knowledge told him should be a pristine alpine lake with no combustible vegetation in the immediate vicinity. The smoke column was distinctive, perfectly vertical despite significant wind conditions that should have dispersed any normal fire signature. Nathan's initial radio report to the fire dispatch center described the smoke location and characteristics, but aerial reconnaissance flights found no evidence of fire activity in the reported area. Nathan's optical equipment confirmed that smoke was definitely rising from the Alpine Lake region, but the thermal imaging systems showed no heat signatures consistent with active combustion. The smoke appeared to be generated by some process that produced visible emissions without the intense heat that characterizes normal wildfire behavior. Nathan documented the anomaly in his daily observation log, noting the specific coordinates, weather conditions, and duration of the mysterious smoke emission. The smoke from the Alpine Lake area continued for 3 consecutive days, maintaining the same vertical column pattern regardless of changing wind conditions. Nathan's meteorological training told him that smoke behavior was one of the most reliable indicators of fire intensity and spread direction. But this smoke was acting independently of all known atmospheric influences. The column would appear each morning at exactly 10:15 a.m. and dissipate at 4:30 p.m., following a schedule that had no relationship to temperature, humidity, or wind patterns. On July 26th, Nathan's observation of the mysterious smoke revealed something that challenged his understanding of both fire behavior and visual perception. The smoke column wasn't just rising from the Alpine Lake. It was forming patterns and configurations that resembled symbols or letters. The formations were too precise and deliberate to be random atmospheric phenomena, suggesting that whatever was generating the smoke was doing so with intentional communication purposes. Nathan's documentation of the smoke patterns filled pages of detailed sketches and written descriptions, capturing symbol formations that appeared to follow some kind of systematic pattern or language. The symbols would form slowly over periods of 15 to 20 minutes, remain visible for approximately 5 minutes, then dissolve and be replaced by new formations. The process continued throughout the daily smoke emission periods, creating what appeared to be extended messages or communications. The content of the smoke symbol messages was initially incomprehensible to Nathan, but patterns began to emerge as he documented more sequences. Certain symbol combinations appeared repeatedly, suggesting a consistent vocabulary or alphabet. Some formations resembled geographic features from his topographical maps, while others seemed to represent weather patterns or seasonal changes. Nathan began to suspect that the smoke was attempting to communicate information about the forest environment and its seasonal cycles. Nathan's growing concern about the smoke phenomena led him to expand his observation routine to include comprehensive photographic documentation and detailed meteorological measurements during each emission period. His data collection revealed that the mysterious smoke coincided with atmospheric conditions that were impossible for the reported location. Temperature readings suggesting intense combustion occurring at coordinates where thermal imaging showed no heat signatures. The situation escalated on August 3rd when Nathan observed smoke rising from 7 different locations simultaneously, each producing the same symbolic formations in perfectly synchronized patterns. The coordination required for multiple smoke sources to produce identical messages at the same time suggested a level of organization and intelligence that transcended normal wildfire behavior. Nathan realized he was witnessing some form of communication network that used smoke emissions as a transmission medium. The synchronized smoke messages revealed information that Nathan recognized as accurate wildfire intelligence. Data about moisture levels in different forest sections, predictions about weather pattern changes, and warnings about areas where fire conditions were becoming dangerous. The smoke was providing fire monitoring information that was more accurate and comprehensive than Nathan's own observational capabilities, despite originating from locations where no human fire spotters were stationed. Nathan's radio communications with fire dispatch became increasingly difficult as he attempted to report the intelligent smoke phenomena without sounding delusional. His reports of synchronized smoke emissions from multiple locations were met with skepticism, particularly when aerial reconnaissance continued to find no evidence of fire activity at the coordinates he was providing. The disconnect between his observations and official investigation results created professional stress that affected his ability to perform normal fire monitoring duties. The breakthrough in understanding the smoke communications came when Nathan realized that the symbol formations were predicting actual wildfire events with remarkable accuracy. Messages he had observed and documented would be followed within days by real fires occurring in locations and spreading in patterns that matched the smoke predictions exactly. The mysterious emissions weren't just random phenomena. They were advance warnings about future fire activity from sources that possessed impossible knowledge of coming events. Nathan's analysis of the predictive smoke messages revealed that they contained detailed information about fire behavior, weather conditions, and resource allocation that could only have come from sources with comprehensive knowledge of forest management and firefighting operations. The messages included technical terminology used by fire professionals, strategic recommendations for crew deployment, and tactical assessments of fire suppression challenges that demonstrated expertise far beyond what any natural phenomenon could possess. The most disturbing revelation came when Nathan recognized that some smoke messages contained information about his own fire monitoring activities. The emissions would reference his daily observation routines, comment on his weather measurements, and provide corrections to his fire location reports before he had made them. The smoke sources were somehow observing his work and providing feedback on his performance as a fire lookout observer. Nathan's investigation of the fire tower's historical records revealed similar reports of Mysterious smoke phenomena dating back to the tower's construction in 1962. Previous fire lookouts had documented unexplained smoke emissions, impossible fire locations, and communication patterns that suggested intelligence behind natural phenomena. Many of these reports had been dismissed as stress-related hallucinations caused by the isolation and psychological pressure of solo fire monitoring duty. The pattern of reports showed that the smoke phenomena intensified during severe fire seasons when early detection and rapid response were most critical for preventing major forest fires. The mysterious emissions seemed to activate during periods when additional fire monitoring capabilities were needed most, suggesting that whatever was generating the smoke was trying to assist with forest protection efforts. Nathan's growing understanding of the smoke communications revealed that they were part of a larger fire monitoring network that operated independently of human fire management systems. The emissions provided information about fire conditions across vast wilderness areas that were inaccessible to normal reconnaissance, creating a surveillance network that covered the entire forest ecosystem with capabilities far beyond what any human organization could achieve. The fire season of 2021 concluded with Nathan's successful prevention of 12 major forest fires through early detection and accurate location reporting. But his achievement was significantly enhanced by information provided through the mysterious smoke communications. His fire monitoring performance exceeded all previous records for the Glacier Peak Tower, with detection times and location accuracy that seemed impossible for a single observer covering such vast territory. Nathan's final report for the 2021 fire season was classified under Special Circumstances Protocols, acknowledging his exceptional performance, while noting unusual atmospheric conditions that had contributed to his success in fire detection and prevention. His detailed documentation of the smoke communication phenomena was filed separately, adding to a growing collection of fire lookout reports that described similar experiences across the National Forest System. The Glacier Peak Fire Tower continues to operate under enhanced monitoring protocols, with fire lookouts instructed to document any unusual smoke phenomena and report communication patterns that might indicate intelligence behind natural fire behavior. Nathan's success during the 2021 season has led to the implementation of new observation techniques that incorporate awareness of possible non-human fire monitoring systems operating in wilderness areas. Nathan Cross continued his career as a fire lookout observer, but his experience with the communicating smoke phenomena fundamentally changed his understanding of forest ecosystems and fire behavior. He began documenting other fire towers where observers had reported similar experiences, discovering a
"Surely this moment must be the same for everyone, everywhere, at least in theory. After all, if something is happening now, shouldn't it be happening now for the entire universe?" But the universe doesn't agree. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, there is no universal now. What feels like the present for you may not be the same for someone moving very fast, or standing in a deep gravitational field, or even simply far away. The deeper we look, the more we realize. Now is not a single thread stretched taut across space. It's a web, woven differently depending on where and how you are. To understand this, let's return for a moment to a train station. It's a quiet evening. The platform is nearly empty. A train approaches, and you see two flashes of lightning, one at the front of the train, one at the back. From where you stand, both flashes reach your eyes at the same time. You conclude, reasonably, that the bolts happen simultaneously. But now imagine someone sitting at the centre of the moving train, riding toward the front. That person is also watching the flashes, but since the train is moving forward, the front flash reaches them sooner and the back flash later. From their perspective, the two events were not simultaneous. The flash at the front came first. They are not wrong. You are not wrong. You simply inhabit different nows. This is called the relativity of simultaneity, and it's one of the most quietly unsettling results of special relativity. It means that simultaneity is not absolute. There is no master list of what events are happening right now in the universe. Instead, what you count as now depends on your state of motion. And this isn't just theory, it's baked into the way time and space work. The faster you move, the more your perception of what's happening elsewhere begins to shift, not just in terms of timing, but in order. In extreme cases, observers in different frames might disagree not just about whether two events happened at the same time, but about which happened first. This doesn't break causality. Events that are causally linked, where one directly affects the other, still agree on order. But it does mean that the idea of a universal clock ticking the same everywhere is an illusion. There is no cosmic bell that rings out a universal now. Instead, each point in the universe carries its own present, a local slice of time defined by the fabric of space-time at that place, and how it's moving through it. What does this mean for you, lying there beneath your ceiling, listening to a voice move softly through the air? It means your now is personal, shaped not just by your thoughts and feelings, but by your place in the cosmos. The Earth's gravity stretches time slightly near the surface. Satellites above experience a subtly different now. Even the cells in your body, depending on altitude, speed, and mass, experience time at slightly different rates.
Let's move to our 11th and final story. The autumn of 2019 was when veteran ranger Victoria Stone discovered that some park service policies exist to address encounters that challenge the very nature of human identity and reality itself. After 32 years of distinguished service, her final case file would contain the most classified document in Park Service history, the Implementation Guide for Policy 847X, which addresses what rangers should do when they encounter themselves on the trail. Victoria Stone had spent over 3 decades protecting wilderness areas across 7 different national parks, earning commendations for her expertise in backcountry safety, wildlife management, and emergency response. Her final assignment at the remote Phantom Ridge Wilderness Area was intended as a peaceful transition toward retirement, managing a pristine 25,000-acre section of mountainous terrain, and that rarely saw more than a dozen visitors per year. The area's extreme isolation and challenging access made it perfect for a veteran ranger seeking solitude while completing her distinguished career. The Phantom Ridge area had always been different from other wilderness assignments Victoria had managed. Park Service records dating back to the 1950s contained references to special circumstances protocols and enhanced observation requirements that weren't explained in standard management guidelines. New rangers assigned to the area received supplementary briefings that weren't part of normal wilderness management training, and turnover rates for the position were unusually high, despite the area's prestigious reputation among Park Service personnel. Victoria's initial briefing for Phantom Ridge included a locked filing cabinet containing what her supervisor referred to as legacy protocols, procedures developed by previous rangers that weren't part of standard Park Service operations. The cabinet contained detailed reports from her predecessors describing encounters and phenomena that required specialized response procedures, not covered in conventional ranger training. Most of the documents were heavily redacted, but they consistently referenced Policy 847X without explaining its content or implementation requirements. Policy 847X wasn't included in any Park Service manual Victoria had studied during her career, and her attempts to research its origins through official channels were met with restricted access notices and referrals to specialized personnel she wasn't authorized to contact. The policy's existence was acknowledged by Park Service headquarters, but its contents were classified at a level above her security clearance, despite her senior status and decades of exemplary service. Victoria's understanding of Policy 847X began to develop through her day-to-day management of the Phantom Ridge area. where she encountered situations that seemed to require responses not covered by standard ranger protocols. Hikers would report seeing Park Service personnel in areas where no rangers were scheduled to be working, with descriptions that matched Victoria's appearance and mannerisms but occurred when she was documented as being miles away from the reported locations. The first direct encounter occurred on October 15th, 2019, when Victoria was conducting her weekly trail maintenance inspection along the remote Shadowfall Creek route. As she rounded a bend in the trail, she saw another ranger approximately 200 yards ahead, wearing identical equipment and moving with familiar efficiency through standard trail safety procedures. The ranger's appearance, posture, and movement patterns were unmistakably her own. But Victoria knew with absolute certainty that she was alone in the wilderness area. Victoria's 32 years of experience had taught her to remain calm during unexpected encounters and to gather information before taking action. She observed the other ranger for several minutes, noting that the figure was conducting the same trail inspection procedures she used, examining the same safety checkpoints she would have prioritized, and moving with decision-making patterns that perfectly matched her own professional habits. When Victoria called out to identify herself and make contact, the other ranger looked directly at her, acknowledged her presence with a professional nod, and continued with the trail inspection as if such encounters were routine. The ranger's face was unmistakably Victoria's own, but with subtle differences that suggested experiences and knowledge that Victoria herself didn't possess. The encounter lasted approximately 15 minutes before the other ranger completed her inspection and departed through a section of trail that Victoria knew led to an impassable cliff face. Victoria's investigation of the encounter site revealed evidence that 2 separate trail inspections had been conducted. Her own, which she was currently completing, and another that showed identical procedures performed with the same equipment and techniques she used. Footprints, equipment marks, and safety documentation confirmed that someone with Victoria's exact working methods had preceded her through the same trail section. The documentation of this encounter in Victoria's daily log triggered an immediate response from Park Service headquarters, including a special briefing call with personnel she had never been authorized to contact during her career. The briefing confirmed that Victoria had experienced what Policy 847X was designed to address: encounters with alternate versions of Park Service personnel that appeared under specific conditions in certain wilderness areas. According to the briefing, Policy 847X had been developed in response to documented cases where park rangers encountered versions of themselves that possessed knowledge, experiences, or capabilities that differed from their own timeline. These encounters occurred most frequently in isolated wilderness areas where rangers worked alone for extended periods, particularly in locations with unusual geological or atmospheric conditions that seem to create temporal or dimensional instabilities. The policy's classification existed because public awareness of these encounters could compromise the effectiveness of Park Service operations and create psychological concerns among personnel who might be assigned to areas where such phenomena occurred. Policy 847X provided guidelines for managing these encounters while maintaining operational effectiveness and protecting the well-being of rangers who experience them. Victoria's implementation of Policy 847X began with understanding that the other ranger she had encountered wasn't a threat, but rather an alternate version of herself from a timeline where different decisions had led to different experiences and knowledge. The encounters served a purpose within the broader functioning of wilderness management, allowing information and expertise to be shared between versions of rangers who had developed different solutions to common challenges. The policy outlined specific procedures for these encounters, including documentation requirements, safety protocols, and communication guidelines that allowed rangers to benefit from the knowledge and experience of their alternate selves while maintaining psychological stability and operational effectiveness. The encounters were treated as professional consultations between experts, rather than supernatural phenomena requiring fear or avoidance. Victoria's subsequent encounters with alternate versions of herself revealed the full scope of what Policy 847X was designed to manage. Different versions of Victoria possessed expertise in areas where she had limited experience. Wildlife management techniques she had never learned, emergency response procedures she had never encountered, and environmental knowledge that came from working in conditions she had never faced. The alternate rangers shared information about innovative solutions to wilderness management challenges, warnings about potential dangers Victoria hadn't yet discovered, and provided guidance about long-term environmental changes that would affect the Phantom Ridge area in coming years. Each encounter was essentially a professional development opportunity that compressed decades of potential experience into brief consultations with versions of herself who had lived different careers. The most significant encounter occurred on November 3, 2019, when Victoria met a version of herself who had apparently worked at Phantom Ridge for over 40 years, possessing intimate knowledge of seasonal patterns, wildlife behavior cycles, and environmental changes that extended far beyond Victoria's own 32-year career. This alternate Victoria provided information about long-term wilderness management strategies that would prove essential for preserving the area's ecosystem integrity over coming decades. The encounter with the 40-year veteran version of herself revealed that Policy 847X was part of a larger Park Service understanding that certain wilderness areas existed as convergence points where different timelines and realities intersected. Rangers assigned to these areas served not just their own timeline, but contributed to wilderness preservation efforts across multiple versions of reality, where different environmental challenges and solutions had developed. Victoria's final encounter with an alternate version of herself occurred on her last day of active service, November 15, 2019. This version of Victoria was just beginning her career at Phantom Ridge, possessing enthusiasm and different perspectives that reminded Victoria of her own early years in Park Service. The encounter allowed Victoria to share the wisdom and experience she had gained over decades of service, creating a cycle of knowledge transfer between different versions of herself across time and reality. The implementation of Policy 847X had transformed Victoria's understanding of Park Service work from individual wilderness management to participation in a larger network of rangers working to preserve natural areas across multiple timelines and realities. Each ranger's knowledge and experience contributed to collective wisdom that benefited wilderness preservation efforts in ways that transcended normal understanding of time and space. Victoria's retirement from active ranger duty included a final briefing on Policy 847X that revealed her role in training other rangers who would experience similar encounters in wilderness areas throughout the park system. Her experience and successful implementation of the policy made her valuable as a mentor for rangers who would need to understand and manage encounters with alternate versions of themselves. Today, Policy 847X remains one of the most classified protocols in Park Service operations, implemented in wilderness areas where temporal or dimensional anomalies create opportunities for encounters between alternate versions of Park Service personnel. Rangers assigned to these areas receive specialized training that prepares them for experiences that transcend normal reality, while serving essential functions in protecting wilderness areas across multiple timelines. When asked about the most profound experience of her career, Victoria always returns to those autumn weeks when she learned that being a park ranger meant serving not just one wilderness area, but contributing to preservation efforts across all possible versions of reality where those same wild places existed. We think we're protecting one forest, one mountain, one wilderness area, she says quietly. But in places where different timelines converge, rangers serve a larger purpose. preserving wild places across all the realities where they exist, sharing knowledge and experience with versions of ourselves who face different challenges and have discovered different solutions. Policy 847X exists because the wilderness itself is bigger than any single timeline, and protecting it requires cooperation between rangers who exist across multiple versions of reality. There you have it. 11 disturbing true park ranger stories that reveal the hidden truth about what really happens in our wilderness areas after dark. From midnight hikers who walk the same trail for 12 hours without stopping, to research stations where time flows backwards, to the mysterious Policy 847X that addresses what rangers do when they meet themselves on the trail. These accounts expose a reality far stranger and more intriguing than anything you've heard around a campfire. If these stories have left you questioning what's really out there in the wilderness, make sure you're subscribed to Verified Fears with that notification bell turned on. We're constantly uncovering new evidence of phenomena that challenge everything we think we know about the natural world. And you won't want to miss what we discover next. The wilderness is vast, ancient, and full of mysteries that go far deeper than we've ever imagined. Stay safe out there. Stay curious, and keep questioning the official explanations for what happens in the places where civilization ends and the unknown begins.